Chapter 231. While Mecha and Euphemia were retreating from the border, Zero, who was staying in the capital, had just met up with Xeon when they received a piece of news that shocked both of them. What? All members of the Council of 40 were attacked, and we don't know if they're still alive. Xeon had just received the news from his adjutant, and it took him a long time to recover from the shock. From a moment, he decided to escort the Knights of the Round Table and bury the huge gifts prepared for the enemy in the capital and the borders of the country. Xeon had already submitted an emergency request to the Council of 40. At the same time, he had also received approval from all the members. According to the plan, all members of the Council of 40 should have secretly left the capital and entered the emergency shelter. However, why would they still be attacked and their whereabouts unknown? It's them. Zero thought of a possibility. Them. Xeon was stunned, and then he exclaimed, "The St. Michael Knight squad? Most of them should have stayed at the border to fight the night. The people who sneaked into the capital wouldn't be able to attack the shelter prepared for the Council of 40. No, there's nothing impossible in this world." Compared to Xeon's disbelief, Zero had a card up his sleeve. This was because Xeon didn't know that in the dark side of this world, there was an ability called GASS. Humans who were proficient in using this ability were equivalent to a well-trained army in certain situations. Right now, the enemy the Council of 40 was facing was probably a human with GASS. Thinking of this, Zero gave up on the idea of telling Xeon this secret. He knew that although the general in front of him had decided to join forces with him and Mecha, there was a bigger ambition in the general's heart. If he knew about the existence of GASS, the general would do everything he could to learn about GASS and do his best to obtain it. In order to avoid unpredictable risks, Zero decided to hide the existence of GASS. He believed that Mecha would make the same choice. The knight was not someone to be trifled with. "General Xeon, leave the matter of the Council of 40 to me. It just so happens that I've set up a small team nearby." After thinking for a while, Zero decided to take the responsibility of dealing with the Council of 40. She also ordered Dawn to lead the army to the border as quickly as possible to fill in the gap created by the retreat of Mecha, Euphemia, and the others. In addition, General Jean, it's best that you gather your troops as quickly as possible and head to the border. He believed that after the night and Princess Euphemia's actions, the enemy would still be in a state of chaos for a while. Therefore, the opportunity has come. Jean furrowed his brows and finally made a decision. Yes, just as Her Excellency Zero had said, now was the time. "Then, I'll leave the 40 Council to you. Leave the border to me." With that, Xeon led his subordinates and left. After watching Xeon and the others disappear into the corridor, Zero turned around and walked down the stairs on the other side. At the same time, he took out his personal communicator. "Tung Tang, are you done sharpening your sword?" Sizzle. After a series of noises, a steady and calm male voice sounded. "Yes, it's ready. Zero, the 4 sacred swords have been waiting for this moment for a long time." Zero heard and smiled lightly. "Yes, we've been waiting for a long time." "Then, Tung Tang, bring your sword to the K5 coordinate and wait for me to meet up. Then, we'll go and meet the leader of the St. Michael Knight Regiment." "Yes, everything is as you wish." 10 minutes ago, the convoy carrying the Council of 40 was escorted by the nightmare troops of Langlan into a refuge facility located about 50 kilometers south of the capital. However, before all the members of the Council of 40 could breathe a sigh of relief, they were unexpectedly surrounded when they entered the refuge. This situation should not have happened in the capital of Langlan Shi. But the reality was like this. Facing the Golden Warhorse, Visingetorix, who was leading 5 Sunderland, everyone in the council knew that they were doomed this time. Get the council members to take them away. Confiscate all the weapons of the soldiers, including the Nightmare. Sean Lowe stood up from the pilot's seat opened by Sunderland and waved his hand to give the order. Looking at the dejected council member who was beaten down by his own soldiers, Sean Law couldn't help but feel relieved in his heart. Although he did not save the Knight of the Round Table, Capturing all the members of the Council of 40 should be enough to make up for his mistake. Thinking of this, Shang-Lo looked back at the golden warhorse, Visingetorix, that was parked next to him. Since just now, Xian had been silent. Even if something unexpected happened, he could only give a unilateral order. Other than that, there was no other communication. Even when facing Shang-Lo, this staff officer. What the hell is going on? Is it because the mission to save the Knight of the Round Table failed? But as soon as this thought appeared, Shang-Lo rejected it. What's more, no matter how Shang-Lo speculated, she was never a roundworm in Xian's stomach. Otherwise, she wouldn't have ended up being killed by her beloved Xiaoyinga in the original work. In the cockpit of the Golden Warhorse, Visingetorix, in a corner that Shang-Lo couldn't see, Xian Hugo Xiaoyinga was sitting in the driver's seat with a dull expression. His left eye was glowing with red light. In the depths of the red light, a V-shaped symbol that looked like a bird spreading its wings was faintly discernible. This place is... At this moment, in front of Xian's eyes, an unknown mysterious world was quietly unfolding in front of his eyes. This place is... Standing on the empty ground, Xian looked at the faint mist around him in surprise. Above the distant dome, there was a round object that looked like the sun, but it wasn't. Strange. At the first sight of this space, this word appeared in Xian's mind, but at the next moment, another word replaced the word strange. Intimate. Yes. After the initial shock, Xian actually discovered that the feeling this space gave him was actually a kind of intimate feeling. It was as if, from the beginning, he was born in this space. What the hell is this place? Looking left and right, Xian couldn't understand the situation in front of him. However, just when he wanted to take a step forward to check the situation around him, the ground suddenly collapsed. As for Xian himself, he fell into the endless abyss from the collapsing earth without any warning. Wow! Xian suddenly let out a cry of surprise, which was followed by a series of hurried gasps. Xiaoyinga, what happened? Shang-Lo, who noticed the abnormality, immediately asked. No, it's nothing. Shang-Lo, let the soldiers line up. After gasping for breath for a while, Xian shook his head and casually found a reason to send Shang-Lo away. Yes, Xiaoyinga. After Shang-Lo left, Xian turned off all the communication channels and sat alone in the cockpit of the Golden Warhorse, Visingetorix. What the hell just happened? Looking at his slightly trembling right hand, Xian subconsciously clenched it. What the hell just happened? My GASS actually went out of control. Thinking back to the scene just now, Xian was confused. The only thing he knew was that at some point in time, his GASS went out of control and brought him to an unfamiliar world. Other than that, Xian knew nothing. After a long silence, Shin opened the cockpit and jumped down from the driver's seat. He landed on the ground and walked towards Shang-Luo's location. Xiaoyinga, the prisoners have been lined up. Shang-Lo, who had ordered his soldiers to line up the prisoners, secretly let out a sigh of relief when he saw Xian. Only Shang-Lo noticed Xian's sudden cry just now. And because of that, Shang-Lo couldn't help but worry about Xian's condition. You all can go down. Leave this to me. Unexpectedly, the moment Xian opened his mouth, he uttered an order that Shang-Luo could not accept. What? Xiaoyinga, you're taking too much of a risk. At least. No, go down. Including you. Xian's face suddenly became ferocious, and there was an irresistible power in his tone. At the same time, in Shang-Luo's eyes, the Xian Hugo Xiaoyinga that he admired seemed to have become extremely strange at this moment. Yes, my lord, please be very careful. Xiaoyinga. Unable to refuse Xian's order, Shang-Lo finally took all the soldiers and left the warehouse that contained all the prisoners except for the members of the 40-member council. Moreover, after Shang-Lo took everyone away, leaving Xian alone to face these prisoners, who numbered no less than hundreds, the prisoners began to become restless as Shang-Lo feared. Humph! A bunch of pitiful worms. Looking at the prisoners who began to become more and more dangerous, Xian raised his head slightly and looked at them condescendingly, as if looking at a group of lowly pigs. Then, Exion's left eye flashed red. He raised his right hand, wiped his left eye, and waved his right hand forward, shouting loudly, "Die!" In an instant, a red light flashed in front of everyone's eyes. Then, after the prisoner's expression became sluggish, they turned around with fanatical faces, looked at their companions beside them, and raised their right hand. Kacha! Rip! The smell of blood quickly condensed into a stinky storm in the air above the warehouse. Below, there were fallen corpses. I didn't lose my power. As the initiator of the bloody scene below, Exion calmly looked at the last prisoner who strangled himself with his right hand. Then, what's going on in that world just now? After confirming that he didn't lose his power, Exion turned around and walked out of the warehouse. What he didn't expect was that his staff officer, Shang Lo, was actually waiting for him at the door of the warehouse. "Shang, what's the matter?" Although surprised, Exion didn't care why Shang Lo was waiting for him, and said slowly, "Those people from the 40-member council said that they want to see you." Shang Lo's expression was very calm, and it seemed that he didn't notice the strangeness in the warehouse. "Is that so? Come with me." Exion nodded his head, and after walking a few steps, he suddenly said, "Oh, right. Shang, get people to guard this place, but don't open the door of the warehouse." "Yes, Xianga, I will get it done for you." Not knowing why, Shang Lo's answer seemed to have another meaning. "We request." Seeing Exion appear, the 40-member council members who were detained by the soldiers in the meeting room immediately stood up. A middle-aged man who seemed to be the leader took a few steps forward, and under the threatening gaze of the soldiers, he fearlessly opened his mouth to speak. However, before he could finish his sentence, Exion waved his sword and knocked him to the ground. "You!" Clang! Exion unsheathed his sword, and his gaze became very sharp. He looked at the members of the council who were looking at him with anger and a hint of fear. Right now, the esteemed council members are our Britannia Empire's captives. Therefore, the esteemed council members, please do your duty well. Otherwise, I will make all of you shut your mouths. Facing Exion's threat, everyone was silent. Very good. In that case, I wish the members of the parliament a pleasant trip. After speaking, Exion sheathed his sword and left the meeting room with Shang Lo. "Xianga, what should we do next? It seems that we have lost contact with the rear." Shang Lo looked around, and after confirming that there was no one else, he opened his mouth and asked, "Wait, no matter what happened in the rear, the enemy will come and find us. Moreover, we still have the esteemed council members in our hands. 3 kilometers north of the fallout shelter, Lu Lucio's nightmare, Gawain, was escorted by 4 Saint Sword's nightmare, Akatsuki, to a place where they could directly observe the fallout shelter, but it was also hidden enough. 0. As you expected, the enemy has already taken control of the fallout shelter. Should we attack?" After putting down the binoculars, Tung Jing Zhilong, who had been hidden by 0, asked, "No, now is not the time to attack." Sitting in Gawain's cockpit, 0 glanced at the empty seat in front of her with a desolate expression. "Before we launch an attack, we have to figure out the situation of our allies who have been captured by the enemy," she said in a clear voice. "So we're going to conduct a sneak attack." Tung Jing Zhilong understood 0's meaning. "Yes, I have a concern. If our captured allies betray us when we attack, I'm afraid all of us will die here." 0 didn't tell 4 Saint Swords about the existence of GASS. Moreover, even in the Black Knight squad, not many people knew about Gias's existence. Therefore, 0 just found a reasonable excuse. "Is that so? Although it is hard to believe, it is possible. After all, the soldiers of this country have no honor to speak of." During the period of being hidden by 0, Tung Jing Zhilong and his subordinates traveled around the country and fully understood all aspects of the country. Naturally, he knew the level of fighting spirit of the soldiers of Langlan Shi. That's it. Then, Tung, arrange people to follow me to investigate." "Yes." Chapter 232. Perhaps because of the lack of manpower, 0 and the others' actions were not hindered. But even so, Zero and the others still maintained the necessary caution and sneaked all the way into a heavily guarded warehouse area. Is it the enemy's arsenal? Obviously, in a situation where there was a lack of manpower, they still arranged a large number of guards to guard the warehouse here, which was quite surprising. Zero, do you want to go in and take a look? Tung Tong Jing Zhilong asked softly. Zero did not answer immediately. Instead, he carefully observed the situation of the guards before slowly nodding his head. Tung Tong Jing Zhilong, who received permission, immediately led his subordinates and began to move. Zero, who stayed behind, revealed a strange look. If GSS, which he had always relied on, had not been taken away, it would not be Tung Tong Jing Zhilong and the others who began to move now, but himself as the king. Such a change made Zero, who had always followed the belief that the king must move first, then the soldiers will follow behind, suffer a great blow. But that's all we can do now. Tung Tong Jing Zhilong and the others moved very quickly. When Zero was distracted, they had already quickly taken care of the guards. As expected of Tung Tong, I didn't expect to take care of these people so quickly. Looking at Tung Tong Jing Zhilong, who sent the signal, Zero walked over and praised. With just 3 people, Tung Tong Jing Zhilong and the others took care of about 20 guards in a short period of time. I just made some small things in my free time. After all, our current strength is far weaker than our enemy. Tung Tong Jing Zhilong glanced at the debris scattered on the ground and shook his head slightly. During the previous escape journey across the ocean, Tung Tong Jing Zhilong also realized some shortcomings and put down some principles. Yes, now, our strength is far lower than the enemy. Some methods are necessary at certain times. Zero agreed with Tung Tong Jing Zhilong's understanding, but in the next moment, he was shocked by the terrifying scene inside the warehouse that was slowly opened. This is... A strong stench rushed out the moment the warehouse door opened, shocking Zero, Tung Tong Jing Zhilong, and the others. Of course, this only lasted for a moment. Regardless of whether it was Zero, who had her face as a mask, or Tung Tong Jing Zhilong, who had been on the battlefield for a long time, both of them had extraordinary willpower. Therefore, even though the scene in front of them was terrifying, it was still just a single experience in their lives. What the hell is going on? Those self-proclaimed Knights of Britannia were indeed beasts with a human face. He actually tortured and killed the captive. Chiba Nagisa, the only female member of the team, covered her mouth in disbelief. No, it wasn't a massacre. These people all committed suicide. After a brief moment of astonishment, Zero calmly observed the traces on the corpse and quickly found some clues. What? Suicide? How could this be? It was understandable if 1 or 2 prisoners committed suicide, but there were hundreds of them. How could they all choose to commit suicide? Not only Tung Tong and Jing Zhilong, but even their teammate Chao Bainai, who was also participating in this operation, found Zero's speculation unbelievable. No, there was nothing to be surprised about. It was just one of the enemy's methods. Tung Tong and everyone else put on the helmets of the Britannia soldiers. In addition, don't make direct contact with the enemy's high-ranking officers. Zero didn't explain where her speculation came from. Instead, she pointed to the Britannia soldiers killed by Tung Tong Jing Zhilong and then casually came up with a reason to dispel their doubts. Among the enemy's high-ranking officers, there may be people who have mastered superb hypnotism. So, don't take off your helmet unless it's absolutely necessary. Tung Tong Jing Zhilong took the helmet from his subordinate and frowned deeply. Although he was a little dissatisfied with Zero's explanation, in the end, he chose to continue believing in her words. Let's go. After putting on the helmet and covering their faces, Tung Tong Jing Zhilong took his subordinates and followed Zero's footsteps. On the other side, Shang Luo, who was guarding outside the conference room, suddenly had a premonition that something was wrong. She immediately took out her communicator and tried to contact the soldiers guarding the warehouse. But the result was like throwing a stone into the sea. What's going on? Shang Luo furrowed her brows. Suddenly, a thought struck her like a bolt of lightning. Enemy? It's an enemy attack. Shang Luo, who thought of this possibility, immediately turned around and rushed into the conference room without hesitation. Bang! The sound of the door being slammed broke the silence in the conference room. Under Xin's deathly stare, many council members who were suffocating under the pressure were saved. Shang Luo, what's the matter? Xin glanced at the council members who were lucky to be saved, then looked at Shang Luo, who opened the door. Xiaoyinga, there's an unexpected situation. Shang Luo didn't immediately say her speculation. Instead, she found an excuse and tried to make Xin leave the conference room. Is that so? Then, I'll leave this to you. Xin turned around and followed Shang Luo out of the conference room. A few minutes passed. Xin returned to the Golden Warhorse Visingetorix's cockpit with a look of anticipation. Shang Luo, let the subordinates transfer the trash. Although I don't want them to drag down our combat power, for now, the existence of those trash is necessary. Yes. Da-da-da-da. Ding, ding, boom. Gunshots. The sound of explosions became an obstacle for Zero and the others. Although a lot of gadgets were made to offset the difference in the number of people, the situation in front of them was not something that could be solved by these gadgets. Zero, we've been discovered. Retreat. Tung Tung Jingu Zyro shouted loudly after emptying the magazine of the semi-automatic rifle that he had seized from the enemy. In retreat. It seems that the previous warehouse is something that the enemy is very concerned about. I was careless. Zero saw that the situation was hopeless and immediately made a decision. However, after discovering the traces of Zero and the others, the enemy seemed to have blocked all the escape routes and tried to trap Zero and the others in this shelter. Hee, the worst situation really happened. But don't think that this can trap us. Zero sneered, raised her hand, took out a starter, and then pressed the button on it. Boom! In an instant, a violent explosion occurred. In the roar of the explosion, the violent vibration caused by the explosion also spread throughout the entire shelter at this moment. The soldiers chasing Zero and the others were in a mess. Now, quick! Tung Tung, Kaishiro, and the others who saw the opportunity took the opportunity to throw out all the remaining grenades in their hands. Boom! Just now, there was a violent explosion in the distance. At this moment, there was an explosion at their feet. In the blink of an eye, the soldiers who were still unable to stand were instantly swallowed by the explosion caused by the grenades that landed at their feet. The road was thus cleared. Tung Tung, Kaishiro, and the others who seized the opportunity immediately rushed out of the shelter along the cleared road to protect Zero. Outside, the personnel who stayed behind had been waiting for a long time. Tung Tung, pay attention to the surrounding situation. Since the enemy has discovered our existence, they will definitely immediately send Nightmare to stop us. In addition, Chiba, immediately investigate the nearby area and look for traces of the council members. I believe that the enemy has no intention of erasing the council members for the time being. Yes, Akatsuki's figure constantly passed under the shade of the trees and quickly searched the surrounding situation. And this scene happened to be discovered by Shin Shangla, who secretly occupied a certain hill. That body is not the Nightmare owned by Langlon West. Shangla put down the binoculars and frowned slightly. Yes, it's not the Nightmare of Langlon West, but I know where it belongs. The Black Knight Regiment. This is the nightmare used by the armed group that calls itself the Black Knight Regiment. Shin smiled gently. It seems that Langlon West doesn't have much strength left to stop us. They even sent the Black Knight Regiment that was chased by the Britannia Empire all the way from Area 11 and fled to Europe. Shang, attack. Let all end early. Yes. As Shangla issued the order to attack, the Sunderland hidden in the surroundings immediately began to move. The battle under the shade of the trees began. Zero, we are under attack. It's the Nightmare. From the looks of it, it should be the body equipped by the 4 Major Knight Regiment in Europe. When Akatsuki's chainsword is hand-cut Sunderland in half, Tung Tung and Jing Zhilong also sent the information he saw to Zero, who was at the back. Is that so? Sure enough, the ones who kidnapped the council members are not other people. It's still the same group of knights that tried to rescue the Knight of the Round Table. Hee hee. It seems that this is their main purpose. Zero smiled and confidently began to set up the formation. Tung Tong, continue with your operation. C1, B1, and L1 scatter and move around the target area, A1 from the east, south, and north. If you encounter enemies, try to entangle them. But if you don't encounter any enemies, immediately retreat and support Ting Tong. Understood. Under Zero's command, the Akatsuki driven by the four holy swords quickly scattered and disappeared into the forest. Using the terrain and the forest as cover, they spread out a huge net towards the area designated by Zero. Come on, St. Michael's Regiment Commander. Let me see what kind of power your Geas has. After Tung Tong and Jing Zhilong confirmed the identity of the enemy, Zero had already speculated a shocking fact based on the information currently available. The person who controlled the power of Geas was none other than the regiment commander of St. Michael's Knight Regiment that sneaked into Langlon West. Otherwise, it was impossible to explain why hundreds of captives suddenly committed suicide and why there were so many soldiers around the warehouse. Interesting. How will you deal with it? Zero took out a chessboard from the Junag beside the driver's seat and arranged the chess pieces on it. She looked down at the chessboard and smiled slightly. Da-da-da. Boom. Woo-woo. The hiss of machine guns, the screech of lynx, and the explosion that left dazzling marks in the lush green forest became the main melody of the forest at this moment. In this terrifying melody that symbolized destruction, the animals that used to live in this quiet forest ran away one after another. They fled from their homeland that maintained a beautiful appearance not long ago. Xianga. The enemy's resistance exceeded our expectations. Shang La summarized all the data from the beginning of the battle and told Xian the result with some surprise. Is that so? Then, this means that Langlon West is very confident in saving the council members. These stray dogs that were chased to Europe are not as weak as we thought. Xian's eyes gradually became cold. But, even so, they can't escape from the scythe of the Grim Reaper. As soon as Xian's voice fell, the Golden Warhorse, Visingetorix, immediately rushed out of the hill. Everyone, follow Xianga. Xian's action did not surprise Shangla. On the contrary, when she saw the Golden Warhorse, Visingetorix, rushing out, she immediately called out to all the participating Sunderland. As soon as this order was given, the situation of the entire battlefield immediately changed. Sunderland, who was fighting with the other members of the Four Holy Swords, immediately turned around and retreated after fainting. They quickly moved closer to the location of the Golden Warhorse, Vercingetorix. The enemy has gathered? Quick! We have to return to the lieutenant colonel's side immediately. Chiba Nagisa remembered Zero's instructions and immediately drove his own plane to Tungtung Jingu Zhirong's position. At this moment, Tungtung Jingu Zhirong's Akatsuki was facing off against the Golden Warhorse, Visingetorix. From this action, it seems that you are the commander of these stray dogs, right? Xian's mind flashed with the scene of the Golden Warhorse Visingetorix and Akatsuki's brief exchange of blows. He realized that the pilot in front of him seemed to have been immersed in swordsmanship for a long time. Every strike was filled with the essence of Japanese swordsmanship. Xian, who grew up in a noble family in the Britannia Empire, was surprised but also familiar. Swordsmanship? Xian murmured and his hand movements changed. The Golden Warhorse, Visingetorix, immediately turned into a human and waved the huge and strange gear-shaped sword in his hand, slashing towards Akatsuki. Tungtung Jingu Zhirong was calm in the face of such a powerful slash. He was not disturbed by the sound of the wind at all. Akatsuki raised the chainsword in his hand and just happened to be stuck at a subtle position on the gear-shaped sword, causing the sword to be unable to move forward. Ga. 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 However, even if the chain sword blocked the attack of a gear-shaped sword, the gear-shaped sword, which was 10 times more powerful than the chain sword, was still able to suppress the chain sword and slash towards Akatsuki's body. Da-da-da. Suddenly, a storm of bullets was set off in the forest, forcing the Golden Warhorse, Vercingetorix, to retreat and saving Akatsuki from a crisis. In the next moment, the four holy swords and the Sunderland led by Shang Law appeared together with some kind of tacit understanding and gathered around their superiors. Ha 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 ha. The main chess pieces are all here. Then, let the decisive battle begin. The leader of St. Michael's Knight Regiment. Looking at the two sides that were once again in a confrontation, Zero tightly held the chess piece that symbolized the king in her hand. Chapter 233. Xia Yingking. These are our enemies this time? After cautiously looking around, and the Akatsuki piloted by Tungtung Jingzhelong, Shang Luo asked, Perhaps so, but that's not important. Shang Luo's cautiousness didn't make Xian feel dignified. Instead, he calmly looked at Tungtung Jingzhelong and the others. I remember the name of these nightmare. It seems to be called Akatsuki. What nostalgic name. Moreover, the person piloting these bodies is probably the man who created the so-called miracle in the Battle of Area 11. The four holy swords led by Lieutenant Colonel Tungtung Jingzhelong, right? After fighting once, Xian had a rough guess of the origin of his opponent. And this guess was also likely to be true. However, no matter how Xian guessed the identity of Tungtung Jingzhelong and the others, Tungtung Jingzhelong and the others would still attack mercilessly. Lieutenant Colonel, give the order. The subordinate's fighting spirit was incomparably high. That's right. This was the first battle of Tungtung Jingzhelong and his subordinates, the four holy swords, after following Zero from Area 11 to Europe. It feels like I haven't felt my blood boil like this in a long time. One of the four holy swords, Chao Bainai sighed. Yes, Xianbo died in battle. Chiba went to perform other tasks. Now, only the three of us are facing enemies several times more than us. How can such a situation not make one's blood boil? Byubu Takashi showed a trace of nostalgia and a confident smile. Yes, since the oldest of the four holy swords, Shimbolingi, died under Lancelot's sword, the four holy swords didn't have any achievements to show. Therefore, today would be the first battle of the four holy swords comeback. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The three nightmare, including the Akatsuki piloted by Tungtung Jingzhelong, raised the chainsword in their hands and pointed at the enemies not far away under the roar of the high-speed rotation of the chain. Chao Bainai, Byubu attacked the encirclement. Tungtung Jingzhelong coldly shouted. Chao Bainai and Byubu Takashi were stunned, then they smiled lightly. 3 versus 8? Very good. The battle was about to begin. Regardless of whether it was Tungtung Jingzhelong or Exin, they all chose to take the initiative and charge towards each other. Looking at the entire situation, Tungtung Jingzhelong and Xian's actions were quite similar to a one-on-one duel between warriors on both sides. In less than 30 seconds, the battle between Tungtung Jingzhelong and Shin's Golden Warhorse, Vercingetorix, was already intense. The chain sword in Zhao's hand. The Golden Warhorse Vercingetorix, who had transformed into a human, wielded the gear blade of Vercingetorix. At this moment, they faithfully held their hands and swung them at the enemy. After that, they clashed with the enemy in mid-air, causing deafening collisions and sparks. At first glance, Tungtung Jingzhelong's Xiao and Xian's Golden Warhorse, Vercingetorix, were fighting back and forth. However, Tungtung Jingzhelong's order to attack the encirclement formation had also been nullified. After all, this set of 4 holy swords was unique to them. The minimum requirement to activate it was at least 3 people. Since Shinbolingi had already died in battle, and Chiba Nagisa had received the order to rescue the council members, it was impossible to rely on Chao Bainai and Byubu Takashi. Thus, as soon as they saw Tungtung Jingzhelong being entangled by Xian, the two immediately changed their tactics. They crossed left and right, covering each other, and fearlessly rushed towards the Sunderland team, led by Shang Luo. Zhao's performance was undoubtedly unknown to Shang Luo and the others. although they had heard of Zhao's existence a long time ago through other channels. But in the end, they had only heard of it. Only by personally experiencing Zhao's performance would they know the difference between Sunderland and Xiao. So fast, Shang Luo led the other Sunderland teams to form a formation, trying to encircle Chao Bainai and Bubu Takashi. To his surprise, he discovered that in this short period of time, Chao Bainai and Bubu Takashi had already rushed to the flank, the Sunderland one step behind. Not good. Quickly close in. Defend. Shang Luo's reaction was swift. However, her subordinate's reaction was a beat slower. And this slap happened to be the last trace that this subordinate left in this world. Chainsword. The chainswords in the hands of two Zhaos Akatsuki chopped down on the Sunderland that was a beat slower. In the blink of an eye, the Sunderland was chopped into three along with the cockpit. Boom! The flames of the explosion didn't only take away the lives of her subordinates. It also took away Shang Luo's carelessness. The performance of Zhao's performance far exceeded Shang Luo's expectations. Although she had displayed a cautious attitude from the beginning, reality told her that this was far from enough. Everyone, defensive formation. Do your best to stall for time. Let Xiaoyinga focus on dealing with the enemy leader. Yes, Shang Luo's order was undoubtedly correct. In terms of numbers, Shang Luo's side originally had the advantage. Under the defensive formation, Shang Luo's side couldn't pry open their defense in a short period of time and could only carry out simple attacks on the outside. For a moment, the entire battle seemed to be waiting for the result of the battle between Tongtong Kaishiro and Shin to welcome the final conclusion. In the distance, hidden on a certain hill, Zero was sitting in the cockpit, looking at the battle in the forest with a trace of complacent smile. Unsurprisingly, the progress of this battle wasn't much different from what he had predicted. The battle between Tongtong Kaishiro and Shin, as well as Shang Luo's decision to go on the defensive after discovering that the Akatsuki's maneuverability was far superior to Sunderland's. She intended to stall for time and delay the enemy, so that Shin could focus more on dealing with Tongtong Kaishiro. Sure enough, as expected, it seems that the St. Michael Knight Order still has an outstanding staff officer, but this staff officer's vision isn't far enough. Zero placed the chess piece that symbolized the king in the center of the chessboard. At the same time, Zero chuckled. Although this is a foolproof plan, once an accident occurs, even a foolproof plan will have loopholes, and these loopholes will become fatal weaknesses. Zero glanced at a certain indicator light on the left side. At this moment, this indicator light was quietly lit up. Ha ha ha! As expected, here comes the accident. The chain sword pierced through the air and slashed at the weak point of the gear blade with a powerful force. After the previous intense battle, Tongtong Kaishiro had already gotten used to this strange weapon. Thus, his offense gradually changed from being on the defensive to being both offensive and defensive. He fought back and forth with the golden warhorse, Vercingetorix. In a short period of time, it was hard to tell who won and who lost. However, when Tongtong Kaishiro's Akatsuki waved its chain sword and forced the gear blade back, the Akatsuki didn't follow up with another attack. Instead, after a feint, it immediately retreated tens of meters and joined up with the other two Akatsuki that did the same. Xia Yingking. Not good. The troops escorting the council members are under attack. Just when Xin wanted to pursue, Shang La's anxious voice suddenly sounded. This caused Xin to frown for a moment. It was a good thing to follow up with another attack. However, if they lost the council members that were supposed to be under control, even if Xin, Shang La, and the others could escape unscathed, they would most likely be punished by the imperial capital. Xin couldn't accept such an outcome, especially in Xion's heart. He had always wanted to personally go to the imperial capital and use his Gia's power to bury the entire empire and even the world. He couldn't accept such an outcome. Thus, the conclusion was out. Shang, bring people to bring up the rear. Vercingetorix's speed is enough to catch up with the troops escorting the council members in a short period of time. But I need time. Xin quickly made a decision that didn't surprise Shang La at all. Yes, Xia Yingqing. Thus, under Shang Lao's lead, all the Sunderland pilots stood in front of Tungtung, Jing Zhilong, and the others without hesitation. They didn't seem to care about why Tungtung, Jing Zhilong, and the others suddenly retreated. Don't you want to think about the intention behind this? Tungtung, Jing Zhilong, who had a certain understanding of Zero's plan, looked at Sunderland in front of him and shook his head slightly. Chao Bainaibu tribe. Now, attack the encirclement formation. Understood. This time, without the obstruction of the Golden Warhorse Vercingetorix, Tungtung Jing Zhilong could finally lead his subordinates to attack the enemy as the core of the encirclement formation. Block them. Buy time for Xia Yingqing. Shang Lao gritted his teeth and shouted in the face of the Akatsuki's ferocious attacks. Gunshots were heard. Sword shadows were everywhere. How boring. Originally, he thought that the captain of the St. Michael's Knights would be a new bright spot. I didn't expect that in the end. He only relied on Gius's power to become the commander of the St. Michael Knight Regiment. At this point, Zero, who was watching this battle from a bystander's point of view, had already seen through Xian's background. He also knew that Xian relied on Gius's power more than his own strategy. Zero didn't care much about such an existence. Forget it. Since we're already at the last step, let this be your final journey into the capital. Zero reached out and pulled out a switch from under the chessboard. Then he pressed it. Kacha! In the blink of an eye, there was a sudden explosion in the forest in the distance. As the billowing smoke rose, a series of loud noises and explosions tore apart the air in the forest, frantically shaking back and forth in the forest. What? An explosion? Shang Lao, who was commanding Sunderland to deal with Tungtung and Jing Zhilong's attacks, was distracted when he heard the series of explosions. He couldn't help but worry about Xian. But this distraction gave Tungtung and Jing Zhilong the opportunity to eliminate the two Sunderland on the left and right flanks of Sunderland's formation. Staff Officer Shang. His subordinates shouted Shang Lao's name loudly. Shang Lao was shocked. He gritted his teeth and forced himself to wake up. Maintain the formation. We have to continue to stall for time. After giving the order, Shang Lao still couldn't calm down, because the series of explosions didn't stop. But from another perspective, didn't the continuous explosions mean that Vercingetorix wasn't shot down, let alone Xian, who was piloting it? Thinking of this, Shang Luo's heart gradually calmed down. They weren't disturbed? It seems that this commander still has some talents around him. He's just a little old-fashioned. Zero glanced at the situation on Tungtung and Jing Zhilong's side, smiled, and didn't care too much about what happened there. The only thing that caught Zero's attention was the Golden Warhorse, Vercingetorix, that was still alive and kicking despite the chain of explosions he had meticulously set up. It seems that it has 4 legs. In short, 2 legs is more flexible. Zero muttered to herself as she took out another switch from the pocket compartment on her left hand. She then pressed it. Boom! Another series of explosions. However, the power of this series of explosions wasn't the same as the previous one. It was several times the power of the previous explosion. In the billowing smoke, countless trees that were blown up fell in the flames everywhere. The branches and leaves that were blown up in the explosion were swept into the air by the shockwave and scattered in this area that had already turned into hell. Buzz! Amidst the thick smoke, a shining golden warhorse rushed out with wisps of smoke. However, after a few steps forward, it fell heavily to the ground. Obviously, in a wave of explosions just now, the golden warhorse Vercingetorix with excellent mobility couldn't escape unscathed. Unfortunately, you can't fly. Looking at the golden warhorse that fell to the ground, the corners of Zero's mouth slowly curled up. Then he raised his thumb, and a small cover on the switch was popped up. Immediately afterward, Zero decisively pressed the last button. Boom! In an instant, a strong explosion erupted where the golden warhorse Vercingetorix was, and it was completely swallowed in it, until the fire disappeared and the thick smoke was washed away by the heat wave. The golden warhorse's body was covered in cracks, Its limbs were blown away, and the weird gear blade was also blown apart. Now, the cockpit with the pilot was still able to maintain its general shape. However, the appearance of this cockpit wasn't so beautiful, and it could even be described as terrible. Finally, I caught you. The minefields I set up in this forest in advance were not in vain. After repeatedly confirming that the golden warhorse Visingetorix was indeed unable to continue fighting, Zero rode Gawain and slowly flew from the air to the area covered in flames. Looking at the wreckage scattered on the ground below, Zero's eyes flickered a few times, as if he was hesitating about something. Yes, he wanted to see the leader of the night squad, who was very likely to have mastered the Geas ability, with his own eyes, but he had a trace of fear. The power of the explosion just now blew the golden warhorse Visingetorix away, but the cockpit was still relatively intact. In other words, the pilot sitting inside either fainted directly or was killed by the aftershock of the explosion. However, there was also another possibility, which was that although the pilot was severely shaken, he still retained a certain amount of combat power, waiting for the moment Zero opened the cockpit to launch a fatal blow and completely turn the situation around. It seems that I've become timid. Suddenly, Zero let out a self-deprecating laugh. Then, Gawain slowly landed in front of the golden warhorse Visingetorix's cockpit, stretched out his hands, grabbed the cockpit, and pulled hard. Gotcha! The cockpit opened in response. At the same time, a black shadow flashed and rushed towards the direction of the forest. However, in the next moment, a black and red light beam erupted from Gawain's chest and swept across the ground, blocking the black shadow that was trying to rush into the forest. What a surprise! I didn't expect the leader of the St. Michael Knight Squad to be such a powerful human. For some reason, after Zero saw the appearance of the black shadow, he suddenly felt like he was going to talk to him face to face. What was even more strange was that Zero subconsciously did as he was told. After walking out of Gawain's cockpit and landing on the ground, Zero raised his pistol and opened the mechanism on his mask. He fearlessly looked at the figure, the leader of the St. Michael Knight Squad. Suddenly, a red light flashed in front of Zero's eyes. Oomph. As expected of the GESS. Don't think that I'll be easily manipulated by the GASS. In the midst of Zero's cold laughter, the voice that rang in his ears was not the other party's voice, but a voice that shocked Zero and yet was strangely familiar. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Lucio, you're finally here. What? Yes. Lucio. Right now. I'm in C's world, talking to you through this person. Chapter 234. CC. Zero. No, it should be Lucio. Now, he found that the world he was in was not the reality he was familiar with, but a strange world where the sun and moon were upside down. And in this world, the figure standing in front of him was the woman who had been missing for a long time since he was robbed of the power of Geas by that person. Where did you go? Lucio looked at the familiar face in front of him, opened his mouth, and finally asked. However, the woman just smiled softly. Haven't you already guessed it? What? Lucio, who has always been arrogant and thinks that he is the best in the world, has he become a coward? A familiar face. A familiar gaze. And that familiar sarcastic tone. We're all telling Lucio that the woman in front of him was the woman who had accompanied him for a period of time and became a common offender of both sides. Sissy. Thinking of this, Lucio suddenly smiled in relief. Sure enough, you're still the same. CC. What? After being captured by me for so long, haven't you learned how to flatter others? Hearing Lucio's mocking words, C also showed a mocking smile. Compared to whether I've learned how to flatter others, I'm curious how you, Lucio, turned from an arrogant madman into a coward who hasn't looked for me and Lilina yet. She hit the nail on the head. Although C's words seemed to be light, they caused a huge blow to Lucio's heart. This was the truth. Lucio was unable to refute, and in the end, he changed the topic. CC, Are you in the imperial capital, Pandora? Also, what is I planning? Although I have some premonitions, I can't guess. With that said, Lucio raised his head and looked at the strange surroundings. Oomph. If it was Lucio, he should have guessed it by now, right? See. Didn't answer Lucio's question. Instead, he kicked Lucio's question back. Lucio furrowed his brows and raised his hands. He looked at his hands, which were supposed to be covered with gloves, but at this moment his hands were exposed. Moreover, the black cloak he was supposed to be wearing had turned into the school uniform he hadn't worn in a long time. This strange scene caused Lucio to feel astonished, but also gave Lucio a trace of clues. CC, tell me the truth. Right now, you should still be in the imperial capital. No, you should be in a corner of Earth far away from Europe. The only reason you can appear in front of me now is because of Geas's power. Also, I'm afraid this world is a collection of Geas, right? Although it's not entirely correct, it's still a good guess. CC chuckled, then revealed a serious expression. Lucio, listen carefully. This place can be said to be a collection of Geas, but can also be said to be not. Geas is just a derivative of this world, and this world's name is C's world. C's world. Lucio was stunned, but when he saw CC, his serious expression, Lucio's mind shook, and he immediately thought of the key point. If Geas is just a derivative of this world, then my goal is to take over this world. Yes, Lucio, who came from another world, is aiming for C's world. However, it's also because of this that I have the power to control this person and temporarily pull you into C's world to meet you when he uses Geas on you. As CC spoke, he projected Xion's figure to the side and gestured to Lucio. What? You can actually do this? In that case, no, I can't do it. At present, I can't do what you think I can. CC, who had a tacit understanding with Lucio, immediately understood what he meant when he saw the change in Lucio's eyes. You can't do it? I can't do it. Even now, I can barely do it. Moreover, we could be discovered at any time. Me? Yes. Hearing CC's straightforward answer, Lucio took a deep breath. After calming down, he finally calmed down. First of all, where are you now? Are you wasting your precious time on this meaningless question? C raised his eyebrows and habitually mocked Lucio. Then, he said with a straight face, right now I might be on an island. However, the only thing I know is that there's a door there, a door that leads to C's world. It's also because of this door that I was able to find you through his Geas. Secondly, I shouldn't be just trying to see C's world. He should have other ideas. Also, how did you do this? Luxiu pointed at Xion, who had become a puppet the moment he used Geas and allowed CC to play with him as he pleased. I don't know why Lucio from the alternate world wants to see C's world, but I know one thing, and that is there must be something that Lucio from the alternate world wants in the depths of C's world. Also, there, Xiaolulu and Mariana are fighting against you from the alternate world. CC. His sudden words shocked Lucio. What? The Emperor? And Mother is still alive? In shock, Lucio couldn't help but raise his hand to cover his face. For a moment, he couldn't face the fact that his dead mother was still alive. CC sighed faintly. Lucio. In reality, Mariana is already dead. Now, she can only live in this world, C's world. From the moment she was attacked and killed, Mariana became a resident of this world. Wait, even so, Mother is still alive, right? The Emperor, His Majesty the Emperor, should have the Geas. If that's the case, he should have the means to talk to Mother. At this moment, Lucio's flexible mind was constantly active, constantly speculating based on the clues he had. But the more he speculated, the more he came to a conclusion that he couldn't believe and didn't want to believe. How is that possible? Lucio's face became more and more ferocious, and his teeth were tightly clenched together. Impossible. Our mother, the mother that Lilina longed for, would never be like this. Looking at Lucio, who was more and more immersed in his speculations, sighed secretly. Sometimes it was not a good thing to be too smart. But fortunately, Lu Lucio didn't know a shocking thing that happened when he and Lilina were young. That was because Mariana, who deeply felt that her Geas aptitude was inferior, did not hesitate to come up with the crazy idea of having Lu Lucio and Nunnally, who were both equally outstanding, marry each other in order to obtain a seed with super high Geas aptitude. Fortunately, this idea was finally abandoned by Mariana under the persuasion of the researcher at the time. Lu Lucio. Perhaps you will never know this secret of the past. Under Cece, his silent gaze, Lu Lucio gradually calmed down. Sorry. I'm sorry. After taking a few deep breaths in succession, Lu Lucio finally calmed down. No. In fact, I quite like to see you like this. After all, in the past, I've always seen that arrogant and conceited side of you. It's rare to see you in such a dilemma. Although Cece didn't make fun of Lu Lucio as long as he saw Cece's playful gaze, he could tell what Cece was thinking. Oof, you really are a witch. Lu Lucio snorted coldly and brought the topic back to the main topic. Third, why would the Emperor? No, Xiao Lulu and Mariana fight against me in the depths of this world? What are they fighting for? Control of this world? Or something else? Both. CC raised his head and looked at the round moon above the dome, which looked like a full moon but had little to do with it. I don't know the details. However, their struggle was centered around the control of this world. However, in the depths of this world, there is something that I can't sense, but it can make them fight for it. Even after inadvertently receiving countless of my help, I still can't find out the true face of that thing. Something that can make me, the Emperor and Mother, fight for it? Then what is? Before Lu Lucio could finish his doubts, C suddenly revealed an anxious expression. Quick, Lu Lucio, go find Shyamna. There is still a door that hasn't been touched by Lu Lucio from the alternate world. If you still want to save me, if you still want to save Lilina, then, boom, a bolt of black lightning descended from the sky, shattering the grotesque world and separating Lu Lucio from C and C. Ah! Lu Lucio screamed in panic during a moment of weightlessness, only to find that he had returned to reality. Moreover, he was still in the forest from before. The only thing that had changed was the figure who had used Geas on him just now. The commander of the St. Michael Knight Order, Shin Hugasharingan, had unknowingly turned into an idiot with dull eyes, drooling at the corner of his mouth, and an idiotic face. Moreover, Lu Lucio felt that there was a strange, yet very familiar power surging in his eyes. Geas. In his surprise, Lu Lucio turned around abruptly and jumped into Gawain's cockpit. He took out a mirror from the storage compartment. I'm really back. My GSS. Looking at the familiar red light, looking at the familiar V symbol in his pupils, Lu Lucio's heart suddenly felt a lot more at ease. However, in the next moment, he noticed an obvious difference. The GSS now seemed to be different from the Geas he had before. The source of the power was exactly the same, but the way it was manifested was different. While thinking, Lu Lucio walked out of Gawain's cockpit again and looked down at Shin, who had turned into an idiot. I'm afraid that my Geas now was taken from him. Although it was a little absurd, Lu Lucio knew that it was true. Other than Lu Lucio, who came from another world, there was only one other person who could do all this. CC, I didn't expect to get your help again at this critical moment. Shin had failed. The Sunderland team, led by Shang Law, had also been defeated. Under the watch of Tang Tong, Kayashiro, and the others, Shang Law saw Shin, who had turned into an idiot. At that moment, Shang Law's world collapsed. The Shin Hugasharingan she admired had turned into an idiot who didn't know the world, didn't know the changes in the outside world, and only knew how to drool and smile foolishly. Such a blow was almost fatal to Shang Law. From then on, Shang Law lost her life goal and became a silent prisoner, staying in the corner of the prison cell all day long. I thought Shang Law had some ability, but I didn't expect her to be like this after capturing her. What a disappointment. After putting on his mask again and becoming Zero again, Lu Lucio couldn't help but express his dissatisfaction with Shang Lao's self-abandonment after appearing in front of Ray Minkai, who had returned to White Wolf Fort. Ray Minkai shook his head with a bitter smile and didn't comment. Zero. You said you've seen C before? The C, who was taken away? The doubt and disbelief on Ray Minkai's face didn't make Zero feel dissatisfied. He knew that the existence of C's world was indeed a shocking truth to the world. However, Zero didn't know that C's world wasn't a secret to Ray Minkai. Moreover, even if Zero didn't say it, Ray Minkai would find an opportunity to announce the information about the fragment he obtained from the remains of the destructive guardian. Therefore, under this coincidence, Ray Minkai and Zero both felt that they had information that the other didn't have. Yes, C used a method I couldn't understand to bring me to a world called C's world. She also told me that Emperor's true goal, take over C's world? To Zero's surprise, Ray Minkai had already revealed a part of the truth when she had just finished speaking. As expected of Her Highness Euphemia's Knight Protector. You're really something. Zero was stunned, then laughed a few times. She didn't care too much about why Ray Minkai could guess a part of the answer. What's next? Ray Minkai shook his head and motioned for Zero to continue. In the end, CC asked me to find a woman named Shyamna. There seems to be a door to C's world with her. Shyamna? Ray Minkai was stunned and asked subconsciously, Are you sure you didn't hear wrongly? No, I heard the name C said very clearly. It was Shyamna. Zero said firmly. Shyamna? It seems that fate still led you there. Zero. After Ray Minkai confirmed that the name was correct, he couldn't help but sigh. It was also because of this sigh that Zero immediately guessed that Ray Minkai indeed knew about Shyamna's existence and the door related to her. Minkai, since you know about it, then say it out loud. For us now, every bit of time we have is a bit more of an opportunity. Hearing Zero's words, Ray Minkai shook his head. I know who Shyamna is, but her true identity is Her Highness the Princess of the Gilkston Kingdom. At the same time, she's also the leader of a branch of the church, Farlaf. She's the leader of a country and also a religious leader? What a troublesome existence. Zero pondered for a while and said impatiently. Ray Minkai glanced at Zero's mask and slowly said a fact. In addition, Her Highness the Princess is also known as a prophet by the people. Under her leadership, even a powerful existence like the Britannia Empire couldn't invade the Gilkston Kingdom at all. Prophet? What a joke. In this world, how can there be any prophetic ability? If that's the case, Lilina wouldn't. Zero's indignant voice stopped abruptly. Ray Minkai didn't care too much about Zero's emotional changes and said in a gentle voice, Yes. There's no prophetic ability in this world. What Her Highness the Princess has is just something like Death Rewind GASS. Death Rewind. Through death in the present, she can travel back to the past and use her experience in the future to correct the present. Zero's brain was indeed the smartest. Ray Minkai only mentioned a concept, and he immediately deduced Shyamna's Gias. Yes, according to the information I received, Her Highness the Princess's death rewind time should be between 6 to 8 hours. Therefore, as long as the Gilkston Kingdom encounters any disasters or wars during this period of time, she has the ability to travel back to the past and correct the future. After listening to Ray Minkai's explanation, Zero fell into deep thought. Although he was puzzled as to why Ray Minkai was so clear about Shyamna's identity and the details of Gias's ability, Zero knew that Ray Minkai was the only person who could help him achieve his goal. Therefore, the bold Zero naturally wouldn't give up and wouldn't doubt where Ray Minkai's information came from. It seems that we can have a friendly conversation with Shyamna, Her Highness the Princess of the Gilkston Kingdom. After figuring everything out, Zero sighed secretly. Yes, you have to know that Gilkston is famous for producing warriors. For such a warlike country, a battle with them is more suitable than any etiquette. Ray Minkai smiled and nodded. Is that so? Then, our carriage should be very suitable for galloping in the desert over there, right? Zero said with a hint. Trust me, Commander Layla has already adjusted the carriage to the most perfect state. What's missing is a knight who can complete the mission. Ray Minkai smiled lightly and pointed at the White Wolf fortress behind him. After the battle at the City of Romance, Karen and Akeem were ready to board the carriage at any time, ride the flames, and rush from the sky to the enemy's base camp. Chapter 235. Compared to Ray Minkai and Zero, who did not hesitate to change the target of the carriage from the imperial capital of Pandorgon to the warrior kingdom of Gilkston in the Middle East region, Layla showed a reaction that the two had expected. Reason? I need a reason. Our preparations so far have been to defeat the 4 major knight regiments of Europe and begin to sweep across Europe while using the carriage to carry out a precise attack on the imperial capital of Pandorgon. Why did you change your mind now? Zero was silent. No, she simply used the cover of her mask to raise the nothing to do with me sign and kicked the football to Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai's mouth twitched a few times, but in the end he had no choice but to accept the troublesome football. Commander Layla, now our strategy has changed. Compared to attacking the risky imperial capital of Pandorgon, we think it is safer to attack the Gilkston Kingdom. After all, the air defense and resistance there are not as strong as the imperial capital of Pandorgon. I refuse. This is not a reason to change the established plan. Ray Minkai's seemingly dignified reason did not convince the shrewd Layla. Although Zero, who was sitting on the side, remained silent, Ray Minkai still felt her playful gaze. Lucio, you bastard. Wait and see. After Ray Minkai secretly cursed Zero, he finally decided to tell Layla part of the matter. Commander Layla, I'm very sorry. What I said just now is not a reason for us to change the established plan, but a temporary decision to not trouble you. However, Ray Minkai's apology did not get Layla's understanding. Be clear, Knight Ray Minkai. If the majestic knight of the Empire's princess is just a lying hypocrite, I'm afraid there will no longer be any knight in this world. Layla's penetrating gaze went straight to Ray Minkai's eyes, as if she wanted to see through Ray Minkai's heart. Ray Minkai was silent for a moment, looked back at Zero, whose expression was completely covered by the mask, and finally made a choice. Commander Layla, do you still remember the Witch of the Forest? This sentence immediately made Layla fall into the memories of the past. It was a snowy day. At that time, Layla was just an ignorant little girl. Lost in the woods, she met a group of people in white robes. Among the group of white-robed people, a tall and slender woman with a distinctive gold-rimmed pattern on her collar stepped out of the crowd and came to Layla. However, this was all Layla's memories of the Witch of the Forest. You know the Witch of the Forest? Recalling the memories of the witch in the forest, Layla took a few deep breaths to stabilize her momentarily uncontrollable emotions. After all, only Layla herself knew about the Witch of the Forest. No one else knew about it. Yes, and there is someone here who has a close relationship with her. Am I right? Zero. At this moment, the football kicked by Zero was kicked back by Lei Minkai. Me? This time, it was Zero's turn to be confused. What Witch of the Forest? He had no idea. The only person he knew who was related to the Demoness was C. Wait. Kai. Is the Witch of the Forest you're talking about C? Zero didn't give Layla a chance to ask. Instead, she asked Ray Minkai first. Correct. The true identity of the Witch of the Forest is C. Ray Minkai nodded and admitted Zero's speculation. No way. C. Actually met Commander Layla? This time, it was Zero's turn to be surprised. Wait, the Witch of the Forest's name is C. Layla took the opportunity to ask her question. Yes, the Witch of the Forest is C, and C is the Witch of the Forest. Commander Layla, I believe you still remember the process of meeting the Witch of the Forest, right? Although we can't explain too much in detail, why we gave up the imperial capital of Pandora and turned to attack the Gilkston Kingdom. One of the key factors was CC, who gave us the information that we had to do so. Ray Minkai looked at Layla, who was deep in thought, and knew that his decision to reveal the identity of the Witch of the Forest had succeeded. Is it information about the Emperor? Layla knew that there weren't many factors that could change the original plan, and the new Emperor was the biggest one of these factors. Yes, that Emperor wants to fight for it should be described as a weapon that can change the world. The one who answered Layla wasn't Ray Minkai, but Zero. Weapon. Although Zero used the word weapon to describe the content of the information, Layla realized that there must be something she didn't understand. Yes, it's a weapon. Commander Layla, right now, we can't tell you too much about the weapons, because we don't have much information in this area at the moment. All the explanations are in the Gilkston Kingdom. Ray Minkai took over the topic. Is that so? Then, I need to go with you for this operation. You also hope that Zero can participate in this operation, don't you? You know, the Gilkston Kingdom is famous for exporting mercenaries. Although this decision was unexpected, Lei Minkai and Zero heaved a sigh of relief. After all, the control of the carriage was in Layla's hands. If Layla didn't agree, even if Zeon came, there was nothing he could do. What's more, from the battle report that came back from the border not long ago, Zeon was probably more concerned about the progress of the suppression of the 4 major knight regiments. There's no time to lose. Since the Emperor has begun to fight for the weapon that can change the world, then we must race against time. It will take 12 hours to adjust the carriage again. I hope that during this time, you can select the elites to participate in this mission. Understood. Ray Minkai and Zero nodded in response. Zero and the members of the Black Knight Regiment naturally didn't have to think too much about it. Zero and Karen were bound to be on the list, and the remaining 2 spots were left to them. As for Ray Minkai's side, all right, there was no need to think about it. Ray Minkai, Euphemia, Cornelia, and Veretta. With just a few words, the 4 spots have been selected. Give up on attacking the imperial capital of Pandora? Attack the Gilkston Kingdom instead? Kai, why did you make such a decision? I don't know what others think, but I, who participated in the crusade against the Gilkston Kingdom, know that this country is not so easy to capture. Cornelia, who is active in the Middle East theater all year round, had an unparalleled right to speak about the Gilkston Kingdom's intelligence. Your Highness Cornelia, are you talking about the prophet of that country? Ray Minkai knew that Cornelia was worried, but after knowing the true face of the prophet and the prophecy, Ray Minkai wasn't too worried. Yes, that country is very strange. No matter how detailed and comprehensive our strategy is in advance, it will be declared a failure at the moment of success, and we will be besieged by the enemy. Cornelia frowned tightly, as if she didn't want to recall the memory of participating in the attack on the Gilkston Kingdom. It's okay. We already know the true face of the prophecy. So, this won't be a hindrance to us. The only worry is that due to the size of the carriage, our participation in this battle will not exceed 20 nightmare. Ray Minkai shook his head and led the topic to another direction. Kai, not just 20 nightmare. Now we can let the pirate Gao to return to the Earth's synchronous orbit and prepare for airborne operations against the Gilkston Kingdom. The first to make a suggestion was Euphemia. The silver-gray cloak on the pirate Gao could indeed allow the pirate Gao to have the ability to enter and exit the atmosphere alone, so Euphemia's suggestion was feasible. Yes, we can do that. In this way, our combat power should be enough to deal with any situation. Moreover, even if there is an accident, we still have the Tusk Lion State Zero. You finally thought of me? Kai, White Cat State Zero, who was lying on the side with its eyes closed, raised its head and looked over. State Zero, can you enter C's world? Suddenly, Ray Minkai thought of a key question. In this world, only C, and VV had code. Based on the information they currently had, C was imprisoned and VV was missing. But Ray Minkai was even more worried that VV might have been killed. Otherwise, why would Charles, who is also Xia Lulu, Fight with the Emperor for control of the world in C's world. C's world? White Cat State Zero turned its head and looked at the vast forest outside the window. Oomph. The inner side of this world? Interesting. Kai. As long as we reach the door, I will know whether I can enter or not. As it spoke, White Cat State Zero raised its paw and licked it. I don't know why, but this world exudes a smell that feels very familiar to me. Although White Cat State Zero did not give a definite answer, Ray Minkai already knew that White Cat State Zero had a certain degree of confidence. Therefore, he looked at Veretta. Veretta, we still have 12 hours to prepare. You go and arrange it properly. The list of people who will ride the carriage this time is me, Her Highness Cornelia, and you, Veretta. As for Euphemia, she can board the pirate Gouda in advance and return to the synchronous orbit to wait for the moment the attack order is issued. Yes, Your Excellency, Veretta responded neatly and went to arrange things. 12 hours was not a lot, but it was also not a little. At the same time that Apollo's carriage was filled with fuel, all the people who participated in this expedition were already present. Kai, how about you still command this time? As soon as Ray Minkai activated Lancelot's screen, Zero's communication came through. Zero, spare me. Instead of commanding from the rear, I am more suitable to charge at the front line. What's more, between the two of us, one of us needs to rush to the temple first and control the troublesome Her Highness. Otherwise, no matter how many strategies we prepare, they will all be broken by the princess's death recall ability. Lei Minkai rattled off a long list of reasons in order to push the responsibility of being the commander to Zero. Zero's mouth twitched, and she could not refute Ray Minkai's reasons. That's right, Gilkstein's strength was not strong. The only thing that troubled Ray Minkai and Zero was the princess's geas. In order to end the battle in the shortest time possible, one of Ray Minkai and Zero must be the first to complete the mission of controlling the princess. Zero knew very well that Lei Minkai was the most suitable candidate for the job. Lancelot. There was also the huge steel lion that could appear and fight at any time and place. They would all be Ray Minkai's reliance to complete the mission. Everyone, there is still 5 minutes before launch. Please be prepared to withstand the impact. Suddenly, Layla, who had changed into a tight-fitting outfit, appeared on the screen in front of him. Commander Layla, it's not too late to back out now. After checking the seatbelt, Cornelia looked at Layla and said, although the time they spent together was a bit short, Cornelia appreciated Layla very much, especially after she learned about Layla's background. No, Your Highness Cornelia, this is my duty. The Gilkstein Kingdom's location is far east of Europa. From the moment Zero's troops landed in the Gilkstein Kingdom, the only thing White Wolf Fort could do was wait. Therefore, as the commander, I must know the situation at the front line immediately and give the corresponding orders. I've already made up my mind. Layla's answer was firm. Is that so? Then good luck. Commander Layla, I hope you can see a battlefield that is completely different from what you know. Looking at Layla's determined eyes, Cornelia knew that she did not need to say anything more. The only thing left was to wait for the actual battle to test Layla's courage and luck. There's still 1 minute before launch. Everyone get ready. There was a countdown in his ears. Ray Minkai slowly closed his eyes and lowered his body completely into the driver's seat. The White Cat, Type 0, blended into Lancelot's system and became Lancelot's core to withstand the impact of Apollo's carriage launch. There are still 30 seconds before launch. Entering the countdown now. The moment the countdown began, everyone's attention was focused. Oh, it's about to launch. Fan, what are we going to do? Yuching Shinichiro, who was patting his chest before the launch and shouting that there was no problem, immediately gave himself away when he heard the countdown. This caused Zero, Karen, and Sean to reveal expressions of shame and disgust. How could this guy be allowed to participate in this expedition? It's too embarrassing. Karen's muttering was unfortunately captured by the sensitive receiver, and it spread throughout the communication channel. In the blink of an eye, suppressed laughter was everywhere. Cough, cough. Focus. Layla coughed. Everyone's attention was pulled back. Counting down from 10 seconds. 10, 9, 3, 2, 1. Apollo's carriage launch. Boom! A huge roar sounded from the deep well in an instant. The burning tail of the rocket also swept out from the bottom of the deep well at the moment when the rocket named Apollo rose into the air. It rushed into the air, sending a farewell to the rocket that rose rapidly into the sky. Chapter 236. The starry sky was dazzling. A tall and slender woman in luxurious clothes with long, beautiful golden hair was escorted by her maids to a balcony above the temple. She was looking up at the starry sky above. She was the noblest and most noble existence in this country. The reason why the Gilkston Kingdom existed and was regarded as an invincible kingdom by the powerful Britannia Empire was because this beautiful and noble woman controlled the power that was regarded as the power of prophecy by the world. Your Highness, it's late at night. The maid standing respectfully behind the woman reminded her in a low voice. Is that so? It seems that the starry sky tonight is indeed charming. Hearing the maid's reminder, the woman closed her eyes slightly and said with a smile. Recently, the woman's heart was firmly surrounded by a sense of uneasiness. This sense of uneasiness didn't come from reality, nor did it come from the uneasiness caused by the country she protected. It came from a deeper level, from the depths of the world. What happened in C's world? The woman didn't know what happened in the depths of C's world, but she could vaguely feel that the world that had become chaotic seemed to be undergoing an unprecedented change. And the woman didn't know where the result of this change would lead to. This was also the source of the woman's troubles during this period of time. How long will it take for the system to be built? The woman turned to look at the maid and asked. Yes, according to the plan, it will take 3 more days to enter the final testing stage. 3 days? Obviously, the maid's answer didn't satisfy the woman. On the contrary, the uneasiness in the woman's heart became more and more obvious. And this time, suddenly, the woman turned around abruptly and looked at the bright starry sky. Above the starry sky. No, it should be above the dome. A silver cylinder crossed the line between dawn and dusk and plunged into the darkness. Notify all aircraft. The carriage has successfully entered the final airborne orbit. At that time, the carriage will begin the airborne procedure. Please prepare for landing buffer. Layla started the broadcast when the carriage completely disappeared into the shadow of Earth. Understood. Department Q, everything is normal. As the representative of Department Q, Ray Minkai responded. Got it. Everything is normal in the Black Knight Group. Zero replied as the representative of the Black Knight Group. Whether it was Ray Minkai's Q Department or Zero's Black Knight Regiment, their air mobility was better than the former's. After all, when they decided to use Apollo's carriage to attack the enemy with precision, Royd and Cecil, with the support of Ray Minkai, quickly created a wing system that could be equipped. Of course, these hurriedly manufactured flying wing systems could not be compared to the flying wing systems that Lancelot and Red Lotus II were equipped with. But for now, it was enough. Zero. Temple or prison? Lei Minkai asked when the carriage was about to reach the airdrop zone. There is still some time left. Is there a difference? Zero smiled. Under normal circumstances, there is indeed no difference. But don't forget that Her Royal Highness Princess Ashayamyuna has the ability to reverse death. Maybe, when we successfully land and launch an attack, Her Royal Highness Princess will use this troublesome ability without us knowing. Although Ray Minkai's words sounded very serious, Zero knew that this guy was just repeating the words he said before the battle began. In order to shut Ray Minkai's mouth, Zero reached out and pressed a button. A series of carefully crafted battle plans were then transmitted to everyone's body system. This is the battle plan I made. Don't be shy with me. You can choose any one of these hundreds of battle plans to carry out. Oh, Lei Minkai was slightly surprised by Zero's generosity. He did not expect that with his reminder, Zero would make hundreds of battle plans in advance to deal with Her Royal Highness Princess. In the original timeline, Lu Lucio who knew nothing about Princess Shimuna's Geas, made hundreds of battle plans under CC's encouragement in order to find a breakthrough point. Wait, Zero, are you kidding? Everyone's battle plans are actually executed in this way. Karen looked at the battle plans that were constantly drawn on the screen in front of her in disbelief. Yes. How? Is there a problem? The enemy this time is very troublesome. In order to guard against some accidents, we will adopt a free attack strategy in this battle. Zero smiled slightly, raised her right hand, and clenched her fist. Don't worry. Although these hundreds of plans seem very cumbersome, their ultimate goal is still the shrine of the Gilkston Kingdom. So, if you find that the battle plan you're carrying out is blocked, then please don't be obsessed with the failure in front of you. Immediately change the battle plan and launch another attack. This, Layla and Akim's side fell silent. After the chaos at the beginning, the Black Knight Regiment also chose to believe in Zero, as usual. As for Rei Minkai's side, needless to say, under the initiative of the backbone Rei Minkai, Zero's hundreds of plans were just a small interlude at the beginning of the battle. The only one who felt strange was Cornelia, but she didn't express anything too much. After all, in the early years, she had participated in the attack on the Gilkston Kingdom and already knew how troublesome the Prophecy Princess was. The reason why Zero would make so many battle plans was probably to deal with the prophecy of the princess. Everyone, attention! The carriage has arrived at the airdrop area, now entering the disassembly procedure. Prepare to resist the impact. With Layla's reminder, the silver cylinder that wrapped everyone's body slowly opened under the control of the automatic disassembly procedure. At this moment, it was pitch black and boundless, but there were countless starlight converging into countless lights that lit up the land below that was shrouded in darkness. So beautiful! The female member of the Zero unit, Kasaka Ayane, looked at the dark land below that was like a starry sky in amazement. As women, Cornelia, Veretta, Karen, and even Lien Shan and Yuching Shinichiro, who were entering space for the first time, couldn't help but exclaim at the beautiful scenery below. Really surprised me. Kai, does the scenery that you and UFFI see include this? While everyone was amazed, Cornelia quietly sent a private message to Rei Minkai. Yes, this is just part of the scenery that the princess and I see. In addition, the scenery we see is broader and more magnificent. Really? Then I look forward to the magnificent universe that will unfold in front of me in the future. Attention, everyone! The airdrop has begun. The amazement didn't last long before it was interrupted by Layla's voice and the rapid descent. At the same time, as the airdrop capsule came into contact with the atmosphere again, the violent tremors that surged like a tide also made most of the people who were just amazed by the cultural lights shut their mouths. They silently endured the violent tremors and the occasional shaking sound until a light gray cloud appeared in front of everyone's eyes. At this moment, the personnel who participated in this airborne operation once again returned to Earth. Successfully entered the atmosphere. Zero unit, open the gliders. Department Q, Black Knight Regiment, please begin. Roger. According to the battle plan, the Zero unit was to act as a feint and launch an attack from the plains of the Gilkston Kingdom first. This mission was believed that the Zero unit, which had been equipped with an AI body specially modified by Leopard, was competent enough. Behind the rapidly descending Zero unit, Lancelot, who had deployed the flying wing system at the same time, led the Nightmare to slowly decelerate and gradually widen the distance between them and the Zero unit. Kai, you just asked me whether it's a prison or a temple, right? Gawain turned his body and flew to Lancelot's side. Yes. Zero, what's your choice? Rei Minkai nodded. Prison. Zero's answer was simple. Oh. Rei Minkai was surprised. This is very surprising to me. Why did you choose prison? No, that's not why I chose prison. But why did you choose the temple? Zero did not answer Rei Minkai's question. Instead, he challenged Rei Minkai. Rei Minkai, who was exposed by Zero, shook his head. I didn't expect you to find out. I'm a little concerned about the temple. What's more, among us, I seem to know the princess's abilities and weaknesses the best. Sure enough, I guessed it. Then, Knight Minkai, if the prison door doesn't have any effect on me, then you must be prepared for the temple. Zero's action was simple. After making the decision, Gawain, along with the nightmare, turned around and flew toward the prison in another direction. Your Highness and Veretta, let's go. Based on the current time, I'm afraid the enemy hasn't been able to make the corresponding anti-air fire network. However, the moment Minkai said this and flew into the sky above the capital of the Gilkston Kingdom, dense anti-air fire suddenly burst out in the city below, sealing off the sky above the capital. What? They reacted so quickly? The Valkyrie that Valletta was piloting did a few somersaults in the air, and it took a lot of effort to avoid the missiles that were shot from the blind spot below. She said with a hint of fear, "No, it's not a quick reaction. It's the other party. The princess has predicted our appearance." Looking at the strange but strangely familiar scene in front of her, Cornelia frowned. Minkai lowered his head and glanced at the battle plan displayed on the screen. According to Zero settings, as long as someone chose and began to implement the selected battle plan, then the battle plan in the middle of implementation would enter a state of lockdown. At this moment, the battle plan presented in front of him and was blocked happened to be the frontal attack strategy adopted by Zero's troops after the successful airborne landing. Did Archimedes succeed? It seems that the princess has died once. Minkai turned his head and glanced at the planes that suddenly fell into a fierce state of crossfire. Your Highness, Veretta, change the target. Give up cutting into the target area from the air. Change to Battle Plan 023. After making a prompt decision, Minkai casually selected a plan from the battle plan list, then sent a signal to Cornelia and Veretta. Pirate Gouda, who did not parachute with Minkai, still stayed in orbit, waiting for Minkai to send a signal. Compared to the planes that were already in full swing and the capital where the entire sky was sealed off, the Great Sighing Prison, which was used to detain dissidents and criminals, was much calmer. Under the bright moonlight, several black shadows flew through the night sky and landed in the shadows of the surrounding rocks protruding from the ground. Zero, do you want to force a breakthrough? After Karen cautiously looked at the empty desert around her, she set her eyes on the huge, sharp rocks that extended from the depths of the canyon, surrounded by cliffs. That was the goal of Zero's mission this time, the Great Sighing Prison. Due to the special terrain, there is only one way to the Great Sighing Prison, the bridge that extended to the gate of the prison. No, we don't need to force a breakthrough. Wait a minute. Zero rejected Karen's proposal and raised her hands to quickly tap back and forth on the keyboard in front of her. Because the moment they landed in the Great Sighing Prison, Zero discovered that Gawain's signal could connect to the Great Sighing Prison signal. Zero's eyes lit up at this discovery, and a plan began to form in her mind. Under Zero's operation, a part of the Great Sighing Prison's control system quickly fell. Although there was still a certain extent before it completely fell, it was enough for Zero and the others to enter the Great Sighing Prison silently. Let's go. Karen, Fan, Yuching. I've already dealt with it. Gawain's figure flickered, and he strutted into the Great Sighing Prison with the Red Lotus second style and the two Akatsuki piloted by Yuching Shinichiro, who had abandoned the almost useless flying wing system. What? The prison has fallen? Beside the machines specially developed for entering and exiting the sea system, Princess Shyamuna of the Gilkston Kingdom looked at the servant half kneeling on the ground in surprise. Yes, Your Highness. A few minutes ago, a group of unidentified militants suddenly entered the Great Sighing Prison. A few minutes ago, Shyamuna's eyebrows twitched, and she suddenly thought of something. Is it an enemy's plot? Not only did they launch a surprise attack from the sky, but they also launched an attack on the Great Sighing Prison while we're dealing with the enemy in the capital. Princess Shyamuna waved her hand, dismissed the servant, and turned to sit on the seat set for her. Feint to the east and attack in the west. Then, The purpose of the enemy's attack on the Great Sighing Prison is probably for that ancient gate, right? While coming to this conclusion, Shyamuna could not help but connect the recent changes in C's world with the attack in front of her. Could it be that this group of unidentified enemies wants to enter C's world through the gate we're guarding? Shyamuna, who was speculating the various possibilities, reached for her waist, took out the small pistol placed there, and aimed it at her neck. Then, is the enemy's intention evil or good? Bang! A gunshot rang out. Shyamuna's life faded away. At the same time, her wise eyes lit up with a unique light when Geas was activated. Let me catch a glimpse of your true colors in death. Chapter 237. Bang! A gunshot rang out. Shyamna died once again. This time, her death was caused by the loss of the plain battlefield. The Alisanda, piloted by Akeem, and the others broke through the temple. The speed of the breakthrough was so fast that even her brother Shalio could not save the temple in time. In the end, Shyamna was forced to kill herself again. She returned to 6 hours ago and repeated the action of notifying Faguna. In this repeated action, under Shyamna's repeated orders, Faguna used 30% more than before. Even Shyamna's brother, the king of Gilkston, Shalio, participated in the battle on the plain battlefield. The Alisanda. No, it was because the pilot piloting the Alisanda was too powerful. From the previous contact, Shyamna knew that the reason Akeem was so powerful was because he had a Geas that even Shyamna could not determine in a short time. Powerful force. Powerful GSS. It seems that the forces on the plains are not a feint. Otherwise, such a powerful force would not have been able to break into my temple without any help. Standing in a warm bath, Shyamna fell into deep thought. If her guess about Akeem and the others was true, then the other directions might be a feint. However, the moment Shyamna made her decision, the lights went dark. The sudden extinguishment of the lights caused the maids to panic. But what made them even more desperate was the sound of a gunshot. When the maids could see some things clearly in the darkness, a bright red color had already spread out in the bath. In the middle of this bright red color was Shyamna's corpse. He died again. Time returned to 6 hours ago. Faguna increased the number of troops on the plain battlefield and strengthened the defense of the power plant. The enemy might launch a surprise attack from there. Shyamna, who woke up from the death recall, turned around and immediately told the maids to inform Faguna. Yes, as you command, may the prophecy guide us to a glorious future. Although this scene was very urgent, after witnessing Shyamna's prophecies so many times, Faguna and the others were already used to it. Tut 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 tut. In the darkness, a series of cannon fire tore through the night, catching Lei Minkai and the others off guard as they attempted to launch a surprise attack on the power plant. Another prophecy. Cornelia let her ride Messiah raise the radiation shield and said while biting her lips. To be honest, ever since she participated in the attack of Gilkston, Cornelia had not fought in such a sullen battle for a long time. It was as if their every move was seen through by the other side, and they were easily countered by the other side. No, it's not a prophecy. Your Highness, Veretta. Retreat. Change to Plan 50. Ray Minkai shook his head and immediately changed the next step. In the blink of an eye, Lancelot, Messiah, and Valkyrie had disappeared from the vicinity of the power plant. I'm afraid the next step of our plan will be seen through. If the power of prophecies really does exist. After following Ray Minkai and Cornelia in a series of operations, Veretta was not confident about the next step of the plan. In fact, this was inevitable. Ray Minkai and Zero had not completely disclosed the information related to GSS. Even if Cornelia, Veretta, and the others had some information, they still did not know enough about GSS. Therefore, they made the same mistake that humans made when dealing with unknown and mysterious beings. No, that's not the case anymore. The previous attacks were nothing more than to prove whether Ray Minkai's memories of Princess Shyamna were reliable. Now, The results were out. Even if the fate of Lucio, Euphemia, Cornelia, and the others had changed drastically, the warrior kingdom of Gilkston still maintained its independence from the world and moved forward on its own. This result undoubtedly made Ray Minkai more confident in his memories of the Gilkston kingdom. Under the night sky, on the northern side of the plain battlefield that was dyed with the light of artillery fire, Lancelot, Messiah, and the Valkyrie quietly followed the shadows scattered in the desert and quickly made a detour toward the city not far away. As long as they moved forward a little more, Ray Minkai and the others would be able to launch a surprise attack from the sky, rush into the temple, and face Princess Shyamna directly. However, the moment Lancelot was about to rush out of the shadows, Ray Minkai was alarmed. Lancelot's movements suddenly paused, and then he suddenly pulled up. At the same time, Ray Minkai also warned Cornelia and Veretta, who were following behind. Swoosh! In the night sky, a flash of light suddenly swept past. Ray Minkai's eyes flashed, and Lancelot flipped his right hand, and the radiation-vibrating sword was immediately unsheathed. Clang! The roar of the swords clashing suddenly tore through the night sky. Sheriel, the mech that appeared in front of him, was a nightmare frame with a shield on both shoulders. It had the distinct style of a knight. Ray Minkai could still clearly remember the name of this airframe. Najid Shomel, King Sheriel's airframe? Ray Minkai's eyes narrowed slightly. Other than the name, Ray Minkai also remembered that King Sheriel was not a normal person, but a paralyzed youth in a wheelchair. Only after he boarded the body that was specially designed for him could the paralyzed young king regain the ability to move freely. This feature was very similar to a certain person who used a stick. All kinds of thoughts flashed through Ray Minkai's mind like lightning, but they did not cause any interference to Ray Minkai's movements. Lancelot and Najid Shomel's swords clashed for only a moment, and after that, the two airframes quickly separated and faced each other in midair. Is this Shyamna's guidance? Najid Shomel did not send any communication, and only looked at Lancelot cautiously, showing a posture that did not allow him to take another step forward. Such a scene made Ray Minkai speculate a little more. It seemed that if it weren't for the appearance of Shilio piloting Najid Shomel, the three of them would have succeeded in their ambush, but failed at the last step and allowed Shyamna to successfully commit suicide. Thus, Shyamna's death recall was activated. Your Highness, Sir has sent a signal for us to continue with the battle plan. If we can't continue with the surprise attack, return to the plains and meet up with Commander Layla and the others. Veretta's eyes lit up as she looked at the password that popped up on the screen. Let's go. Veretta, leave this to Kai. Cornelia, who had risked her life countless times on the battlefield, did not hesitate, nor did she have any romantic thoughts. She only nodded faintly and drove Messiah and Veretta out of the shadows of the desert, attempting to launch a surprise attack on the shrine. In the sky, Sheriel, who discovered Cornelia's actions, immediately tried to intercept them, but was stopped by Ray Minkai. Your opponent should be me, King Sheriel. At the same time, Ray Minkai's voice unexpectedly sounded in the international public channel. I've heard this voice before. The Knight of the Britannia Empire, Ray Minkai. At the same time, Lancelot's pilot. Sheriel was not surprised that Ray Minkai took the initiative to speak. On the contrary, he seemed to be looking forward to it, as well as fighting spirit. That's right, Ray Minkai, the Empire's Knight. I heard that you have a lion, right? Let me see that steel lion of yours. How about it? Lion? Ray Minkai was slightly surprised. He did not expect that the fame of the Longfong lion had spread to this country. Yes, lion. As long as I defeat your lion, then I can become the most powerful warrior in the world. While Sheriel made his declaration loudly, he drove Najid Shomel to launch a round of attacks, waving the saber in his hand and slashing at Lancelot. Dang! Najid Shomel's saber. Lancelot's radiation vibrating sword. At this moment, they were constantly colliding with each other, launching round after round of attacks with the determination to cut each other in half. However, this seemingly fierce exchange resulted in the result that neither side could do anything to the other in a short time. Very strong. But before I see the lion, I will never lose. Sheriel's eyes flashed with determination. Then his lips moved up and down, silently muttering a name. In an instant, Neged Thumel fiercely waved the saber in his right hand and dodged Lancelot's attack. Suddenly, his figure flickered, and in the blink of an eye, countless phantoms appeared from his body and quickly spread in all directions. Tut 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 tut. As these phantoms spread rapidly and surrounded Lancelot, the roar of the machine guns exploded. Suddenly, the whole sky was filled with the roar of the machine guns tearing through the air. Facing such a situation, Ray Minkai asked Lancelot to launch the radiation shield at the first moment to block the machine gun fire from all directions. At the same time, he quickly swept his gaze around. Phantom attack? Do you think you are an F-91 with paint chipped off? Shilio's move might be a trump card for the pilots of this world. But for Ray Minkai, who was a transmigrator and the champion of the Steel Polo World competition, it was not a big deal. After all, whether it was the Phantom attack or the multiple clones in many Mecha battle animations, especially in the Gouda series, they were already used to the point of being overused. State 0, it's coming, Ray Minkai called, and the White Cat, State 0, which was integrated with Lancelot's system, immediately began to exert its power. Amidst the roar of the machine guns, amidst the sparks that splashed out when the bullets hit the radiation shield, streaks of red flowing light from dim to bright quickly spread out from Lancelot's torso. In just a few breaths, it had spread to his head and finally gathered in Lancelot's eyes. Buzz! As the red flowing light gathered in Lancelot's eyes, an invisible but clearly felt energy wave burst out from Lancelot's body. Puff! 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 As soon as this energy fluctuation appeared, it scattered all of Neged Thumel's doppelgangers in the sky and forced Neged Thumel's true body out. This is? Shiliu's eyes widened as he looked at Lancelot, whose eyes were glowing with red light. Lancelot's current state was not predicted by his sister, Shyamna. This is Lancelot that my sister did not predict. In other words, this is Lancelot's final form? As he thought of this, Shiliu's fighting spirit was once again ignited. However, this time, no matter how much his fighting spirit was ignited, Neged Thumel's end was already decided. Clones? Ray Minkai's voice sounded. The radiating light wings behind Lancelot suddenly flashed, and several dozens of silhouettes appeared in the sky, just like the move that Neged Thumel had used previously. However, at this moment, the targets that were surrounded by the Phantom clones were Neged Thumel and Shiliu himself. This is Neged Thumel's system? How is it possible? This should be a system unique to Neged Thumel. Shiliu looked at Lancelot in disbelief as he surrounded Neged Thumel and continued to create phantom clones in the sky. Unique? Hee. Shiliu, although you are a king, your vision is as laughable as a frog at the bottom of a well. Wake up. Your sister is not as omnipotent as you think. Shut up. As soon as he heard Ray Minkai's words, Shiliu, the young king who had a deep sister-complex soul, immediately exploded. He did not care which one of the Lancelot clones in the sky was the real one. What he wanted to do was to cut down all the Lancelot clones that appeared in front of him and destroy them all. Swoosh! Puff, puff, puff. Boom, boom, boom. Without encountering any resistance, after successfully destroying a few of Lancelot's phantom clones, Shiliu finally discovered a shocking fact. That was, these phantom doppelgangers that surrounded him were not phantoms that Neged Thumel had stimulated, but real objects that truly existed in this world. How is this possible? Nothing is impossible. Before Kalyu's bewildered voice fell, a rapidly descending shadow appeared above Neged Thumel's head. I told you, Shiliu, you are just a frog at the bottom of a well that is holed up in this small world. State 0. In the blink of an eye, All the Lancelot clones that surrounded Neged Thumel raised the radiation vibrosword in their hands and turned into a stream of light, attacking Neged Thumel from all directions. Shyamna, come out. Chapter 238. It appeared again. Sitting in the temple, Shyamna looked at the two unfamiliar mechs that destroyed the wall and rushed to her in the billowing dust. She sighed secretly. Outside the temple, her brother Kaleo seemed to be forced into a corner by the opponent's hidden trump card. She didn't expect that Neged Thumir, who was built with the power of a country, couldn't defeat Lancelot. Whether it's the world of sea or the changes in the real world, our Gilkston kingdom can't keep up. Shyamna stared at the woman who walked down from the unfamiliar mech. She had already recognized her identity. Cornelia Li Britannia. Humph. So it's the Witch of Britain? Next time, I won't let you open the door of the kingdom so easily. Ka! When Cornelia spoke to persuade her to surrender, Shyamna skillfully took out her pistol and fired a shot at her neck. In the blink of an eye, Death Backtrack was launched again. Under the night sky, above the temple, the sky occupied by Lancelot's phantoms seemed to be ushering in the end of the battle. However, when Lancelot launched the final blow and completely defeated Neged Thumir, Ray Minkai suddenly frowned and instinctively followed the instructions given by his subconscious. He forcefully retracted Lancelot's attack and immediately made an emergency retreat. Boom! Boom! The second after Lancelot rose into the sky, countless artillery fire lit up from the desert below without warning, drowning the phantoms of Lancelot in the sky. In the roar, Lancelot's phantoms were all submerged and destroyed by these artillery fire. Anti-air artillery array. Did Cornelia and Veretta succeed just now? Ray Minkai glanced at the screen and found that Cornelia and Veretta, who were launching a surprise attack on the temple, were blocked by fierce artillery fire. They had no choice but to retreat and join up with Layla and the others. Death Backtrack again? What a troublesome power. Don't even think about running. As long as I have my sister's prophecy, I can become the strongest warrior. With the support of his own anti-aircraft artillery, Neged Thumel, who was liberated from the battle of a trapped beast, once again accelerated and rushed in front of Lancelot. Bang! The swords clashed once again. However, the attacks from both sides were not limited to the swords in their hands. They were using everything they had. Punches and kicks. Firearms. The blade of the sword. At this moment, they had all become props and offensive weapons in the fierce battle between Lancelot and Neged Shumir. The strongest warrior? Charlia, do you think you can become the strongest warrior just by following your ideas? What wishful thinking. Lancelot raised his left arm and blocked Neged Thumel's kick with his radiation shield. At the same time, Raiminkai's mocking voice rang out. What? Defeat the strongest person in the world, the strongest existence, and then become the strongest warrior. Charlia's belief seemed to be very firm. He was not defeated by Ray Minkai's words. Neged Thumel retracted his leg and raised his gun. He continuously fired a series of bullets at Lancelot. Then, he quickly climbed up and pounced at Lancelot with his sword in a condescending manner. Yes, defeating the strongest person would make one the strongest warrior. This belief is really the idea of a child playing house. Lancelot did not dodge. He held the sword with both hands and crossed it high, blocking Neged Thumel's attack from the sky. However, the price of this block was that Lancelot was almost suppressed from mid-air to the ground. Child playing house. Shut up. I am the king of the Kirkstan kingdom. I bear the responsibility of the rise and fall of this country. This kind of responsibility is actually treated as child playing house by you, a knight who only knows how to play with the princess. This is really, really infuriating. Neged Thumel somersaulted and landed below Lancelot's head. The moment he landed, he rushed forward and lifted his leg to kick at Lancelot's torso. Boom! The flying kick failed. A green light bloomed in front of Lancelot's chest, blocking Neged Thumel's flying kick like an incomparably sturdy fortress. Shield? How is it possible that there is actually a third shield? Charlia was already familiar with the radiation shield on Lancelot's left and right forearms. However, the radiation shield on his torso that was rarely used became a surprise weapon at this moment. In his shock, Lancelot lowered his body and his right hand swept out from the side like lightning, firmly grasping Neged Shomir's right leg. Then, with a twist of his body, he brought Neged Shomir's body and smashed it fiercely to the sand beside him. Boom! Neged Thumel, who crashed into the sand with a huge force, splashed a huge cloud of sand and dust. Rustle, rustle. The rustling sound caused by the sand and dust scattered on the body kept ringing in Charlia's ears. It was as if there were countless people laughing in his ears, deeply stimulating Charlia's heart. Swoosh! In the midst of the sand and dust, a cold light suddenly appeared. When the sand and dust in the sky were cut by this cold light, the radiation shield on Lancelot's forearm lit up again. Just like the previous scene, it blocked Neged Thumel's slash once again. Bang! The moment the blade came into contact with the radiation shield, a gigantic hand reached out from the sand and accurately grabbed Lancelot's head. Immediately after, Neged Thumel's head also rushed out from the sand and slammed into Lancelot's head. Boom! The screen in front of Ray Minkai flickered. This was the result of Charlia's rude and unreasonable actions. Fortunately, this collision did not cause any accident to Lancelot's surveillance camera. However, in order to prevent Charlia from continuing his rude and barbaric behavior, Ray Minkai gently pushed with his left hand. Lancelot's left hand immediately clasped together like a knife and went straight for Neged Thumel's waist. Suddenly, a burst of discordant noise appeared again. In the next second, Lancelot's left hand that was going straight for Neged Thumel's waist actually encountered a layer of solid obstruction, causing the attack that should have been successful to fail in the end. Ray Minkai's gaze focused. He actually saw that Neged Thumel's waist that should have been empty suddenly had an additional layer of armor. TSK. Is it death recall again? There's no other way. State 0, send the signal. Let UFFI come down. Understood. In the shrine, Shyamuna, who slowly opened her eyes, secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Again, she was saved again. In her time, after her brother Charlia's Neged Thumel was destroyed by Lancelot, the man who was driving Lancelot finally arrived in front of her. Knight. It was the man who was known as the Lion Knight, and the rumors spread among the upper echelons of various countries. What a scary man. If she had not acted decisively, she would have been defeated by the man who saw through the hidden truth of her GSS. However, since I already know your true colors, then your path will end here. Shyamuna raised her right hand and gestured. The maid beside her immediately handed her a communication device. Help me contact Faguna. Yes, as you command. However, before the maid could take action, a loud rumbling sound suddenly sounded from the sky. Moreover, it was getting louder and more intense. Not good. It's coming toward the shrine. Quickly protect Her Highness. As soon as the clever maids heard the rumbling sound, they immediately went forward and used their bodies to protect Shyamuna. Boom! It only took a few breaths of time for the maids to protect Shyamuna from the explosion. The dome of the temple collapsed after a series of violent collisions. Da-da-da-da! Amidst the sand and dust that drowned the shrine, a sound that Shyamuna was extremely familiar with rang out continuously. Bang! 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 The sound of gunshots, the sound of glassware being broken, it continued to ring out. At the same time, Shyamuna felt a trace of moist coldness spreading along the ground. This was the liquid contained in the glassware. Suddenly, sensing that something was wrong, Shyamuna forcefully pulled out the pistol from her waist and aimed it at her own neck again. Ka! However, when the trigger was pulled halfway, a strong electric current surged from the ground without warning from the liquid that permeated the entire shrine. In the blink of an eye, Shyamuna lost all ability to move. Zap! The electric current from the liquid wreaked havoc in Shyamuna's body mercilessly. Shyamuna could no longer hold onto the pistol that had killed her countless times. She could only watch in despair as the pistol fell from her hand and fell to the ground. After a long while, the electric current in the liquid quietly subsided, leaving behind a mess on the ground and a twitching Shyamuna who still had some consciousness left. As for the maids, they had already fainted when the electric current struck them. Their bodies and willpower were far weaker than Shyamuna's. Splat! The sound of water being stepped on could be heard. Shyamuna, who was enduring the pain caused by the twitching of her body, shifted her gaze with difficulty in the direction of the sound. The next moment, a young girl wearing a pink pilot's uniform stepped on the water and appeared in front of her. Furthermore, there were two round objects following the young girl as she moved forward. Looks like you succeeded. The young girl in the pink pilot's uniform sized up her surroundings and fixed her gaze on Shyamuna, who was in pain but unable to say anything. The corners of Shyamuna's mouth twitched, but she could not utter a word. Me? The young girl blinked. Then, she clasped her hands together and said apologetically, I'm sorry. I don't mean any harm. I just didn't want you to use Geas again, so I had to do this. Don't worry. As long as you don't use Geas again, there won't be any problems. Then, the young girl looked at the two round things beside her. Hero, help me settle Princess Shyamuna down. You guys protect Her Highness well. Understood. Hero. Understood. Hero. With the help of the young girl and the round thing called Hero, Shyamuna, who had lost her ability to move, sat back down on her seat. However, the moment Shyamuna sat back down on her seat, she saw the culprit who had smashed through the dome of the lookout. It was a huge body that was almost as tall as the dome of the lookout. It had cold and hard lines, sturdy and thick armor, and a hideous skull. This size, this coldness, and this visual impact was something that Nightmare did not have. Nu, nig, beep beep, kai. Euphemia has succeeded. Hearing the words of the white cat state zero, Ray Minkai nodded slowly. Just now, when the water droplet that the pirate Gao was in fell from the sky, Ray Minkai saw it. What he did not expect was how successful and fast Euphemia's operation was. It was as if everything had been arranged in advance, and everything was over once the process was completed. Sister, the lookout is finished. Compared to Ray Minkai's calmness, Shiryu was much more panicky. When the fireball that the pirate Gao had turned into swept across the night sky, Shiryu had seen it with his own eyes. However, he did not expect the target of the fireball to be the lookout. In his shock, Shiryu, who was out of his wits, actually ignored Lancelot's existence and directly turned around and ran towards the lookout. Don't run. Ray Minkai naturally would not let Shiryu leave. One must know that in the lookout, other than Shyamuna, there was also Euphemia. If Shiryu were to run over, Euphemia might be in danger due to the program. Whoa! Lancelot's hook claw shot out fiercely and went straight towards Najid Thumel with the sound of the wind. However, Najid Thumel turned around and paid the price of a shield on his right shoulder being shattered. After dealing with Lancelot's attack, Najid Thumel did not continue to fight and continued to turn around and run towards the lookout as if he had lost all will to fight. In the end, the girl who said she wanted to be the strongest warrior was just a sister complex. Seeing this, Ray Minkai shook his head slightly, sighed, and drove Lancelot to follow closely behind. When Shiryu got down from Najid Thumel and drove the electric wheelchair into the lookout, just like when Shyamuna saw the pirate Gouda for the first time, she was deeply shocked by his figure. This is the Nightmare? No, this is the pirate Gouda. Nice to meet you. I'm Euphemia Libertania, King Shiryu of the Gilkston Kingdom. Nice to meet you. Chapter 239. Euphemia Libertania? She's Cornelia's sister? Shamuna's heart was in turmoil as she endured the pain of the convulsions. Despite the experience and knowledge she accumulated from traveling between life and death countless times, She couldn't imagine that Euphemia, the princess who was regarded as a vase by the nobles of the empire, would descend from the sky with a mech she had never seen before and launch a targeted attack on her. Such an existence had never appeared in Shamuna's memory. Moreover, the weakness of her geas seemed to have been grasped by the enemy. Moreover, Shalio's sudden return to the temple, when she couldn't move, might have caused her to fall into the enemy's trap. Shamuna was extremely anxious, but her body that was paralyzed by the strong electric current couldn't obey her command. Being able to clench her teeth and maintain the last trace of consciousness was already Shamuna's greatest limit. Britannia? Hand over my sister. Sure enough, just as Shamuna expected, Shalio, who suddenly returned to the temple, drove the plane and shouted at Euphemia, who was standing not far in front of Shamuna. No, King Shalio. According to the rules of war, Princess Shamuna of your country is already considered our captive. If you want to redeem Princess Shamuna, please show your sincerity. Facing the black muzzle, Euphemia raised her head fearlessly and said calmly. Euphemia didn't care much about Najid Mir's muzzle, because she knew that even if she walked down from Pirate Gauda's autonomous program was still executing the safety program to protect Euphemia. As long as Najid Mir moved under Shalio's piloting, the silver-gray cloak on Pirate Gauda's body would instantly turn into liquid armor like before and provide solid defense for Euphemia. Euphemia's rejection made Shalio even more anxious and angry. Shalio realized that ever since he rushed into the temple, his sister, Shamuna, who had always responded to his calls, was silent. It was as if he was like a dead man. Sister. Kaleo gritted his teeth as he struggled internally. Suddenly, Najid Mel's figure suddenly flashed as he once again activated the multiple phantom system that he had used when fighting against Lancelot. He attempted to use this to confuse Euphemia's vision and rush to Shaimuna's side to save her. However, no matter how well you planned, reality would always give you a slap in the face. This is not. Just as Najid Mel rushed in front of Pirate Gauda, a gust of wind suddenly came from above. Shilio was alarmed. He hurriedly stopped Najid Mel's forward charge, forcing him to retreat in an instant. Lancelot, Shario, who was retreating rapidly, couldn't help but curse out through gritted teeth when he saw where the sound of wind breaking from above came from. I'm sorry. This road is blocked. Amidst the rolling sand and stones, Lancelot slowly stood up. He raised his right hand and pointed at Najid Shumir with radiation vibration. Get out of the way. Najid Mel was about to rush forward, but he was stopped by a shout in the next second. Stop! Kaleo! Sister. It turned out that the person who stopped Kaleo was Shaimuna, who was paralyzed by the electric shock. But at this moment, Shaimuna somehow regained the strength to speak and was able to speak to stop Kaleo's attack. But Shaimuna could only speak. Other than that, her body and limbs seemed to have been disconnected, unable to listen to Shaimuna's command. What a surprise. Princess Shaimuna, I didn't expect you to still have the strength to speak. Under Rei Minkai's control, Lancelot raised his hand to stop Euphemia from trying to let Harrow continue to control Shaimuna's actions. Since Princess Euphemia of the Britannia Empire is here, then you should be the Lion Knight. Now, we may be able to talk openly and honestly. Shaimuna's attitude changed very quickly. Other than expressing her willingness to talk to Rei Minkai and Euphemia, she also ordered Kaleo to stop all fighting and reconcile with Rei Minkai's side. This change made Rei Minkai frown, but soon he felt relieved, because according to Rei Minkai's knowledge, the reason for such a huge change in Shaimuna's attitude was probably because of World C. Sister. I've already ordered Fagana to stop all fighting. Kaleo, who had followed Shaimuna's orders, descended from Najid Mel's car without warning. Kaleo could only rely on the intelligent wheelchair to move, which made Euphemia slightly surprised. Are you surprised? Princess of the Empire. Kaleo sensed Euphemia's gaze and revealed a mocking smile. No, you're very strong. King Kaleo. Euphemia shook her head slightly and said seriously, "Humph." Kaleo, who couldn't see a trace of falsehood in Euphemia's expression, snorted coldly, then turned around and looked at Ray Minkai, who was walking down from the Lancelot. "Can I go to my sister's side?" Ray Minkai was silent, and so was Euphemia. "Kaleo, just maintain your current appearance." Shyamuna knew what Ray Minkai and Euphemia were afraid of. At the same time, in order to show her sincerity, she asked Euphemia again, "Princess of the Empire, can you help me up? Although I could talk to you now, this attitude isn't good." Ray Minkai and Euphemia had no reason to reject Shyamuna's initiative. Moreover, Shyamuna's request was equivalent to handing her life over to Euphemia. Then, with Euphemia's help, Shyamuna leaned weakly on the chair and stared at Ray Minkai. Lion Knight, perhaps you're the biggest variable in this world. No matter how I use my Geas power, I can't seem to see your existence clearly. That's because my allies can solve all problems before I make a move. Hee. Perhaps that's the case. But Lion Knight, can you solve the problem of C's world? Perhaps the reason you attacked the Gilkston Kingdom is to enter C's world. Am I right? After adjusting her position, Shyamuna felt that her impression of Ray Minkai and the others had changed fundamentally. Perhaps, from the beginning, Ray Minkai and the others didn't care about the Gilkston Kingdom, the country that Shyamuna and her brother guarded. From the very beginning, they were here for the gate to C's world. Otherwise, the team that started a fierce battle in the Great Sighing Prison would be superfluous. Yes, Princess Shyamuna, what did you find in C's world? Ray Minkai and Shyamuna looked at each other for a while and nodded. Chaos or death. C's world seems to be enveloped by a great war. I can't sense the existence of God. Perhaps, from the shocking change that swept C's world not long ago, God is already dead. Tut tut tut. Sighing Prison. This existence, which was regarded as a taboo by all the citizens of the Gilkston Kingdom, was enveloped by a fierce war today. In the flames of war, no matter how evil and heinous the criminals were, they were as fragile as cookies and could be trampled on at will. Ha 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 ha. Kill. Kill. Little ones, concentrate your firepower and kill all these fools who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth and invade our territory. Surrounded by many mass-produced, mobile weapons produced by the Gilkston Kingdom, a huge figure brutally smashed the pillars that supported this underground space and rushed toward the enemy in front of it. Hey, Zero, what a huge body. What should we do? Yuching Shinichiro, who had a lively personality, saw the huge body surrounded by gold Barca and shouted. Especially when he saw the true face of the huge figure, he screamed again and again. Scorpion, scorpion. Zero, that's a huge scorpion. Shut up, Yuching. Listen to Zero's orders. Shan's mouth twitched and shouted at Yuching Shinichiro. Zero, what should we do? Break out? Or go around? Compared to Yuching Shinichiro and Shan, Karen was much calmer. Yes, don't be nervous. The appearance of this thing is already within our expectations. Before Ray Minkai set off, he mentioned the existence of this body. Shan, Yuching, do your best to delay the small things around it. Karen, you go deal with that big guy. Then, wait for my instructions. Yes. Karen, Shan, and Yuching Shinichiro did not say anything. They decisively followed Zero's instructions and began to tangle with the enemies blocking their way. Zero, on the other hand, piloted Gawain. After retreating for a distance, he stopped in a space with fewer stone pillars, but much more space. Yes, this should be the place. Zero raised his hand and entered a set of data on the keyboard. He looked at the demonstration results and nodded slightly. However, just as Zero was about to follow the demonstration results and put it into action, a sharp pain swept through his mind without warning. What? The intense pain made Zero's face ferocious and his eyes wide open. Moreover, the power of Geas that Zero had just recovered lost control again and activated on its own. The next moment, Zero's vision turned black. When the light reappeared, Zero found himself in a chaotic space. The Gawain he was piloting had disappeared. What was even stranger was that Zero had once again reverted from her black cloak and masked to the school uniform she wore during her school days. This is the world where is the world from last time? Zero's eyelids twitched a few times. He subconsciously raised his head and shouted a few times. CC, where are you? However, no matter how much Zero shouted, no one in this chaotic space responded to his call. What happened? Zero's brows were tightly furrowed. While he was puzzled, Zero raised his feet, randomly chose a direction, and walked forward, trying to find some clues. After an unknown period of time, a ray of light suddenly appeared in front of Zero's eyes. As soon as he saw the ray of light, Zero, who had been walking in this chaotic space, suddenly became alert. He quickly quickened his pace and jogged toward the ray of light. CC. Vaguely, Zero seemed to have seen CC's figure in the ray of light. However, the moment Zero was about to rush out of this chaotic space, the scene in front of his eyes suddenly changed. In the dark brown, there were traces of black mist. A burst of murmurs sounded in his ears, but he couldn't hear the content clearly. There was also the scene that shocked Zero the most. A black sphere quietly emerged from the mist. With the appearance of the black sphere, a figure that Zero engraved in his heart also appeared in front of Zero. Mother, yes, a noble and peaceful expression, a vigorous and elegant figure, and a pair of gentle eyes that Zero and his sister, Nunnally, could still clearly remember. This was Lucio and Nunnally's biological mother, Mariana V. Britannia. Mother, so, you really didn't die. Although he had already guessed the truth, when he saw the figure of his long-dead mother with his own eyes, Lucio's heart still couldn't help but ripple. Lucio, you're here. In the black sphere, Mariana smiled slightly. That kind and gentle smile was as warm as Lucio and Nunnally's when they were young. Mother, you. Before Lucio could finish his words, Mariana's figure suddenly flashed and changed into another figure. The figure that made Lucio bear a grudge, so much so that the hatred was deep in his bones. Emperor, Charles D.I. Britannia. Lucio, why did you come here? Don't tell me you want to take away the authority of God from our hands? Just like your kindred who came here from another world. Charles's majestic body brought a huge pressure towards Lucio, pressuring Lucio to the point that he almost couldn't breathe. Another world, kindred? It's him. Despite this, Lucio still keenly captured the key information. Humph, ha 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 ha. Ridiculous. Under Charles's huge pressure, Lucio, who was almost unable to breathe a moment ago, actually burst into laughter. What? Lucio, what are you laughing at? Charles glared at Lucio, and the huge pressure suddenly increased by 30%, almost pushing Lucio to the ground. However, Lucio was still able to withstand this pressure. What am I laughing at? Ridiculous. Emperor Charles. Ridiculous. You can't defeat me, so you came to find me to vent your anger. Ridiculous. Lucio's laughter became more and more carefree and louder. Ha 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 ha. I'm really ridiculous. I didn't expect that my goal all along was actually such a ridiculous person, such a ridiculous existence. What was the purpose of my persistence? Lucio, shut up. The surface of the black sphere surged, and Charles actually walked out of the black sphere, extended his right hand towards Lucio, and grabbed Lucio's neck. Shut up. Hee. How is that possible? Charles, did you know? But when you decided to abandon me and Lilina, did you ever think that today would happen? Although I also hate me, but now I'm very grateful to me. Because he has made my dream come true. Charles, accept the judgment of fate. Chapter 240. Trial? Ha ha ha. What a joke. As soon as he heard Lucio's words, Charles's right hand tightened around Lucio's neck. Lucio, I've never done anything wrong in my life. This world is so dark. A weak child can't face the danger of the law of the jungle, even if he has the title of a prince. Therefore, in order to survive, in order to kill the enemy, I need to be stronger enough to kill everything. Therefore, I became the emperor of the Britannia Empire. Charles's words were so impassioned, so righteous. Perhaps this was Charles's way of life, the way of justice. Even so, Lucio, who was being choked by the neck, still glared at the man who was related to him as his father with hatred and disdain. Don't forget, Lucio, because of my existence as the emperor, you, not only Euphemia, Cornelia, and even Scanazel, who tried to seize the emperor's throne, all grew up under my protection. At this point, Charles's eyes were so threatening and sharp. Is that so? Protection? What a joke. What happened to me and my sister when my mother, Mariana, was killed? What did you do? Lucio's smile was so cold, his eyes so sharp. What did I do? Ridiculous. Insensible children will always be insensible. This is to protect you. Without the protection of your mother, can you and Nunnally still grow up in the imperial palace? Don't be so self-righteous. Protection? If that's the case, why did the Britannia Empire and you suddenly launch an attack on District 11, Japan, when we became hostages? This is your protection. Lucio exploded. As he fiercely accused the man in front of him of what he had done, he raised his hands and grabbed the man's right hand that was choking his neck, and then he forcefully pulled it away. What a joke. This is protection. Ha ha ha. Lucio, who had escaped from the clutches of Charles, took a few steps back and laughed heartily. In the end, all of you are self-righteous people, taking matters into his own hands, forcing his own ideas onto us, a pair of young and powerless siblings, forcing us into calamity after calamity in the name of protection. Lucio slowly straightened his body, raised his right hand, and pointed at Charles. He asked sternly, would any parent in the world do what you do? The 98th Emperor of the Britannia Empire, Charles de Britannia. What? Truly shameless, biting the hand that feeds you. Charles was enraged by Lucio's questioning. Just as he was about to flare up, there was a sudden clap in the chaos. Papa! Following the clear clapping, a figure quietly emerged from the chaos. Well said. As expected of Lucio v. Britannia. It seems that no matter which world we are in, we always have something in common, a common understanding. As soon as the figure appeared, Lucio and Charles turned pale with fright. Lucio's eyes erupted with hatred. Charles, on the other hand, revealed a look of shock and a hint of fear. How? Go on. No matter how many times I've watched this drama between father and son, I've never gotten tired of it. After all, a long time ago, I performed the same drama myself. The man's gaze swept over Charles and Lucio, and he slowly said, although the scene that happened was different from what it is now, in essence, it's still a drama of revenge between father and son. Isn't it? Emperor Lucio. Lucio gnashed his teeth and said. There was anger, confusion, and even more fear in his voice. Man from another world. Charles roared, and several arcs of light suddenly erupted from the chaos, attacking the figure that appeared from the chaos. However, it was useless. The arc of light that seemed to have great power suddenly dissipated when it was about to hit the man's body. What? Charles frowned. Oof. Charles, no, Xiaolulu. Don't bother. I don't know much less about this world than you do, and in some aspects, I know more than you. That person was none other than the emperor who had seized Lucio's Gia's power. Lucio, who came from another world, raised his hand and struck Charles's figure so hard that he almost couldn't maintain his current body. Look, Xiaolulu, if you continue to stay here, I'll let me watch the whole process of your trial with my own eyes. You wait for me. Man from another world. This is C's world. This is my world. I will never let your conspiracy succeed. Amidst Charles's bellows, his figure rapidly dissipated, once again disappearing into the chaos. After Charles's existence completely disappeared, The Emperor turned to look at Lu Lucio. Oomph, I really didn't expect it. You actually came to this world too. The me of this world. Emperor, who are you? Why do you have the same appearance as me, and can seize my GASS? Lu Lucio said angrily. If it was said that Lu Lucio was able to remain calm when facing Charles, then Lu Lucio would no longer be able to remain calm when facing this Lu Lucio from another world. Hee, isn't the answer obvious? When did I become so irrational? Facing Lu Lucio's question, the Emperor showed a mocking smile. Lu Lucio was stunned and then calmed down. Oomph, I didn't expect that I would be persuaded by myself one day. Believe me, you won't like this day. The Emperor's mouth moved slightly, as if he was mocking himself. Emperor, you want to seize this world, seize world. Lu Lucio's speech was not a question, but a statement of fact. Yes, I want to seize world. Are you surprised? Lu Lucio. Then, the Emperor added another sentence. Speaking of which, no matter how many times I have experienced it, the experience of facing myself and discussing my own motives for action with myself is always so wonderful. The Emperor did not give Lu Lucio a chance to speak, but said to himself, moreover, whenever I meet myself, I can't help but envy myself for having such a loyal follower by my side, as well as having a witch by my side who wouldn't change even in death. Fate is truly an unfathomable goddess. You, Lu Lucio, who was on guard against the Emperor from head to toe, looked at the Emperor, who suddenly sighed in surprise. Such an enemy made Lu Lucio unable to make a move for a while. Hee, are you surprised? Lu Lucio, do you know a fledgling? A fledgling? Lu Lucio's body was still tense. Even though the him in front of him seemed to be lamenting the current situation, he was the enemy who had seized the power of his GSS. Yes, a fledgling. The Emperor raised his right hand and opened his palm. See, Lu Lucio, this world is like a world wrapped in a solid eggshell. We're the fledglings curled up in it. If we can't break the eggshell when the moment of destiny comes, we will not be able to be born. What? Lu Lucio did not understand why the him in front of him would say such ambiguous words. Looking at the puzzled Lu Lucio, the Emperor smiled and put down his right hand. Come, Lu Lucio, if you still want to take back Lilina and enter this world that Xia Lulu has become a god, C's world. I'm here, waiting for you. After that, the surrounding chaos surged again. While devouring the Emperor's figure, it also expelled Lu Lucio from this world. Zero. Answer me. Are you there? Lu Lucio blacked out and found that he was still in Gawain's cockpit. He was still wearing the mask named Zero, and the anxious voices of Karen and Sean sounded in his ears. At this moment, Lu Lucio finally recovered from the shock brought about by the change of the world and realized that he was now Zero. Karen, Sean, Yuqing, report your position. Lu Lucio, no, it should be Zero. After recognizing the world he was in, he immediately entered the role he was playing and launched the original plan. Arrived at the predetermined location. Zero. I'm already here. Let's start. I can't hold on anymore. Compared to the calmness of Karen and Sean, Yuqing Shinichiro was still as jumpy. Right away, Zero's hands tapped on the keyboard for a while, then pressed the OK button. Come, be my stepping stone. In an instant, two beams of light lit up in the underground space where Gawain was located, and all the stone pillars supporting this underground space were destroyed in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. The next moment, the huge scorpion body that was chasing Red Lotus 2 Styles and Gawain Barca, who was besieging Sean and Yuqing Shinichiro, were all affected by the collapse of the underground space and were powerlessly swallowed by the falling sand and stones. Amidst the billowing sand and dust, Karen, Sean, and Yuqing Shinichiro slowly breathed a sigh of relief. If Zero's actions were a few minutes slower, their situation would have become even more dangerous, and they might even be in danger of being destroyed. Zero, what happened just now? After a sigh of relief, Karen tried to ask, "No, I'm sorry. I just found out something, that's all. I'm sorry to have troubled you." Zero shook his head, then solemnly apologized. As for the world he saw just now, no, maybe it was an illusion. Zero didn't want to tell his loyal followers, Karen and Sean. Everything would be answered at the ancient door at the bottom of this prison. Are we fledglings, with the world as a shell? Emperor, what do you want to tell me? Gods, do they really exist? Euphemia looked at Shaimyuna, who was leaning on the chair, with some surprise. They do, as long as you regard the world of sea as the birthplace of gods. Shaimyuna nodded slightly. This action was already the largest action Shaimyuna could make at the moment. Gods? Perhaps the world of sea is really as you perceive, and it has undergone a shocking change. Even if gods were not killed, I'm afraid they are not any better. Rei Minkai's mind kept replaying his memories of Sea's world. In the original world, gods were killed by Lu Lucio. But now, the world had undergone an irreversible change. Whether it was Cornelia, Euphemia, or even Lu Lucio at the center of the world line, they were all moving toward an unpredictable future in this change. Under this situation, Sea's world was the first to undergo a shocking change. Is that so? It seems that the Lion Knight can also know the situation of Sea's world. Then, can I ask you for a favor? As a condition for assisting you. Shaimyuna raised her eyes and looked straight at Rei Minkai. Condition? Is it for this country? Or is it because of your brother? Rei Minkai knew Shaimyuna's life very well. Now, the premise that Shaimyuna took the initiative to call for help was probably for the people of this country. And for Shilyu, you guessed right. Shaimyuna admitted her thoughts without hesitation. Then, she turned to look at Euphemia, and then at Rei Minkai. Lion Knight, I can see that although you and Princess Euphemia have a relationship of ruler and servant, in some aspects, you are the leader. So, this request is not made to the Britannia Empire, but to you, the Lion Knight. Sister, you don't have to do this. I can let this country and Shilyu, who had been listening by the side, became anxious. Shut up, Shilyu. Let me make the decision on this matter. Shaimyuna reprimanded her brother, then looked at Rei Minkai, waiting for his reply. Rei Minkai frowned, seeming to be in a difficult position. After all, he was Euphemia's guardian knight, not the emperor who could control the entire Britannia Empire. But Rei Minkai felt that there was something behind Shaimyuna's condition. Thinking until here, Rei Minkai looked at Euphemia. Euphemia, however, simply nodded. Minkai, just do as you wish. I will support you. Okay. After receiving Euphemia's encouragement, Rei Minkai no longer hesitated and nodded, agreeing to Shaimyuna's condition. Obviously, after Rei Minkai agreed, Shaimyuna let out a sigh of relief. It seems that our Gilxton kingdom can finally be liberated from this endless cycle of reincarnation. Reincarnation? Rei Minkai was shocked. Could it be that Your Highness Shaimyuna? Yes. Lion Knight, no matter how I activate my GESS, I can't defeat you in your line. In my most terrifying memory, the lion you rode turned into a divine lion with a golden horn, and it could summon thunder from the 9 heavens as it walked. With just a light blow, you turned our Gilxton kingdom into nothingness. Shaimyuna's words were as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders, and she described the terror of the Long Fong lion style. Chapter 241 Golden Horn Lion of God. Rei Minkai pondered for a while and said name. The Empire's strongest energy lion. No, not all. White Cat State Zero denied the name that Rei Minkai said. Its figure emerged from Lancelot's body and jumped onto Rei Minkai's shoulder. Its appearance made Shaimyuna reveal a trace of fear. It seemed that, just like what Shaimyuna said, in the many timelines created by her special Geas ability, she had witnessed the power of White Cat State Zero and even the long-fanged Lion State Zero. As expected, the strongest power is by your side. Lion Knight. Shyamna's gaze never left the white cat state 0 since it appeared. In Shyamna's memory, this was probably the friendliest time. Woman, have you seen a golden-horned lion? White cat state 0 looked at Shyamna and asked with its mouth slightly open. Yes, sir. I've seen your supreme power before. Facing the white cat state 0's question, Shyamna's attitude surprised Ray Minkai and Euphemia. Shyamna's attitude, now, was not the attitude of a superior or subordinate, but the attitude of a devout person in front of the God that she believed in. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai and Euphemia looked at each other. After staring at Shyamna for a while, White Cat State 0 raised its head and said in Ray Minkai's ear, I am afraid that what this woman said is true. In fact, Kai, your guess is not wrong. What this woman saw should be the Empire's strongest energy lion. But it is a little different. Different, yes. What this woman saw should be the energy lion in a berserk state. I'm not sure how strong the energy lion was at that time. After all, the factor that could trigger the berserk state. Speaking of this, White Cat State 0 tilted its head slightly. Obviously, its gaze had changed from Shyamna to Euphemia. Ray Minkai was shocked. Could it be that in one of the timelines that Shyamna experienced, Euphemia died in battle, and he, who lost Euphemia, fell into madness and caused the energy lion to go berserk? Kai. Euphemia did not understand. No, it's okay. UFFI. Ray Minkai shook his head and signaled Euphemia not to care too much about this matter, and looked at Shyamna again. Let's put these things aside. Princess Shyamna, how do we enter C's world? Through the system behind me. Shyamna tilted her head slightly and gestured to a button behind her to Ray Minkai and Euphemia. When we were building this system, we had imagined that multiple people could enter C's world to explore the design. Although it was not fully operational after the construction, I believe that this system should be able to help you enter C's world. Under Shyamna's signal, Shilio opened the system completely and looked at the 2 hibernation pods that were slowly rising from the ground. Looking at the 2 hibernation pods, Ray Minkai was a little surprised. He did not expect Shyamna to make such a precautionary decision. This was a memory fragment that did not exist in the original work's memory. White Cat State 0 jumped down from Ray Minkai's shoulder when the hibernation pods were completely rising. It circled around the hibernation pods a few times and stretched out its little paw to sense the interior of the hibernation pods. After that, it nodded its little head. Kai, this should be able to enter C's world. I can already feel a familiar aura. White Cat State 0's affirmation symbolized the next step of the operation. However, before the next step of the operation, Ray Minkai and Euphemia still had to wait for the arrival of Layla's 0 team, Cornelia, and Veretta. After a while, under Fogana's lead, Layla, Cornelia, and the others, who had traces of smoke all over their bodies, entered the temple. UFFI, are you okay? As soon as they entered, Cornelia saw the pirate Gauda, who had smashed through the entire dome of the temple, and Lancelot, who had stopped at the side. No, I'm fine. Sister Royal. Euphemia smiled slightly, indicating that she was fine. Sister Royal, you came at the right time. Kai and I are about to enter C's world. Please guard here. Euphemia changed the topic and told them what Ray Minkai and she were about to do next. C's world, Cornelia, Veretta, and even Layla exclaimed in unison. Yes, C's world. We are about to go to the inner side of this world. Princess Cornelia, Veretta, and Commander Layla, please guard this place when Princess Euphemia, Princess Shyamna, and I go to C's world. Hearing that, Cornelia and Veretta nodded and accepted Ray Minkai and Euphemia's request, even though they had doubts in their hearts. After all, to C's world, Cornelia and Veretta were undoubtedly unfamiliar with it. However, Layla's gaze was patrolling around the temple. No matter how she looked, she only felt that Shyamna seemed to have a similar temperament to the witch of the forest in her memory. Are you looking for someone? A guest from afar. Shyamna noticed Layla's gaze. No, I'm just curious. I'm just curious. Layla waved her hand repeatedly, indicating that she had no ill intentions. Don't worry about it. I know who you're looking for. Believe me, you will be able to see her soon, as long as the Lion Knight and Princess's actions are successful. After that, Shyamna looked at Ray Minkai and Euphemia. Lion Knight and Princess Euphemia, are you ready? I feel that C's world seems to have some changes. She had already told them what needed to be told. Ray Minkai and Euphemia looked at each other, then lay down in the hibernation pod under the gaze of Cornelia, Veretta, Layla, and the others. Of course, White Cat State Zero jumped into Ray Minkai's hibernation pod. This was an action to follow into C's world. Let's begin. Shario, I'll leave this to you. Yes, sister. Shyamna took a deep look at her brother, then let him start her hibernation pod and led Ray Minkai and Euphemia into C's world. On the other side, Zero and the others, who had killed all the resistance forces in the Sighing Prison, finally arrived at the bottom of the Sighing Prison, an underground reservoir full of water. This is our destination this time. Due to the narrow passage, Zero and the others had to abandon the mech and walk here. They looked at the calm water in front of them and could not help but feel troubled. Zero, we came all the way here just to drink water? Yuching Shinichiro looked around and said while scratching his hair. No, don't be impatient. Zero gestured for everyone to not be anxious, then looked around for a while and finally stood on the right side of the platform where they were. Over there was a vase with a mysterious pattern on it. The existence of this vase was undoubtedly too conspicuous for the space they were in now. Moreover, for some reason, when Zero saw this vase, she was sure that it must be the key to opening the path ahead. Zero stood behind the vase for a while, then raised her hand to grab the handle and the vase, and then twisted slightly. A stream of light flashed in Zero's heart, and a hidden mechanism in the vase was immediately activated. The huge reservoir of water that flooded this underground space immediately rushed toward the periphery of the Sighing Prison through the open sluice gate and along the waterway that had dried up for God knows how many years. Wow, amazing. That's the door? The place we're going this time? Yuching Shinichiro looked at the huge door that gradually appeared in front of everyone as the water level rapidly decreased. That's the door you mentioned, Zero? Karen and Sean looked at each other and asked in unison. Yes, we found the door. I'll handle the rest of the way myself. Karen, Sean, Yuching Shinichiro. You guys stay here and guard it. There was a burst of heat in her heart, and Zero knew that this was the door calling her. No, Zero, it's too dangerous. At the very least, you have to let Karen go with you. Sean was the first to object. Yes, even if we can't go, Karen's existence is necessary. Yuching Shinichiro also said, no, you guys can't go where I'm going next. Therefore, guarding this place well is the key to ensuring my safe return. Zero's tone was unquestionable. I know, Zero, I'll stay here and guard the way back for you. Hearing that, Karen no longer insisted. Yes, I'll leave it to you guys. Under the gazes of Karen, Sean, and Yuching Shinichiro, Zero stepped forward and gradually moved toward the door that was liberated. When Zero stepped on the platform that could touch the door, the heat in Zero's heart suddenly burst out like a raging flame, and an astonishing heat and light burst out. The next moment, the light flashed. Zero disappeared. Under the gazes of Karen, Sean, and Yuching Shinichiro, she disappeared. Disappeared. Zero is gone. Yuching Shinichiro exclaimed in shock. Shut up. Karen frowned and raised her hand to slap him. Sean, you guys stay here and watch. I'll go back and wait on the Red Lotus second style. Yes, I'll leave the top to you. Karen, chaos. It was still the same chaos. But when Zero took off that disguise and returned to the clothes of student, he still found that the world he was in was still the same chaos world that he had experienced before. I've come in again. Zero shook his hand and sighed slightly. This time, the feeling was stronger and more tangible than the previous time. Furthermore, I didn't expect you guys to come too. Zero turned around and looked not far behind him. A man and two women were standing there. They were Ray Minkai, Euphemia, and an unfamiliar woman. As expected, you're more pleasing to the eye if you put down your mask. Lu Lucio. Ray Minkai sized up Lu Lucio and smiled slightly. I can finally see your face with my own eyes again. Lu Lucio. Euphemia also said happily, this is really troublesome. This world is always so ruthless in tearing apart other people's privacy. Lu Lucio sighed and shook his head slightly. But in reality, Lu Lucio was not angry about his disguise being removed. You're Zero from the Black Discrimination Team. How surprising. I didn't expect the famous Zero to be the prince of the Britannia Empire. The unfamiliar woman withdrew her gaze from Lu Lucio and nodded. Hello, Your Highness. I'm the princess of the Gilkstan Kingdom, Shyamna. Oh, you're the prophet Shyamna who made the prophecy? Lu Lucio looked at Shyamna in surprise, then looked at Ray Minkai and revealed a mischievous smile. As expected of a knight, I didn't expect you to be so successful in dealing with princesses. Cough, cough. Let's cut the crap. Lei Minkai coughed to stop Lu Lucio from continuing, then quickly brought the topic back to the main topic. Your Highness, Shyamna, what do we do now? Shyamna looked up at the chaos above her head and nodded slightly. Follow me. I hope the battle in the depths of the chaos hasn't ended yet. Under Shyamna's lead, Ray Minkai and the others walked in the chaos for an unknown amount of time. The only thing they knew was that the light in front of them was getting bigger and bigger. This scene caused Lu Lucio, who had experienced it once before, to show a vigilant look. Based on his previous experience, Lu Lucio was afraid that Charles, who was also the father of the siblings, would launch a surprise attack like before. Now, no one will care about our arrival. Shyamna wasn't surprised by Lu Lucio's reaction, but she didn't find it strange either. She simply stated a fact. It's the Emperor? Ray Minkai made a guess. Yes. When we were confronting each other, the Emperor who sees the Empire suppress Charles in the depths of C's world. I'm afraid the outcome will be decided soon. When they stepped out of the chaos and entered the light, Shyamna stopped. Do we still want to continue? The answer was obvious. Lu Lucio didn't answer. Instead, he used his actions to prove it. He took the lead and stepped firmly into the light. Then, with a flash of his body, he disappeared into the light. It's the same person. Lion Knight, Your Highness, let's go. Shyamna sighed and followed Lu Lucio closely. Behind them were Ray Minkai and Euphemia. A white light flashed in front of them. A magnificent and solemn palace suddenly appeared in front of them. This is the palace of the imperial capital, Pandoragon. Seeing the palace, Euphemia cried out in surprise. She definitely wouldn't be mistaken. That was the place where she had lived since she was born. On the other side of the palace, there was an ancient palace supported by many white jade pillars and connected by countless floating stone steps. That's the god's relic. As soon as he saw the ancient palace, Lei Minkai recognized its identity. In that case, what they were seeing now was probably a battle between the Emperor and Charles. Chapter 242. I'll go there. There was no hesitation or argument. Zero took the lead and chose the destination. Furthermore, from the looks of it, he had already decided to head to that magnificent palace from the very beginning. Ray Minkai and Euphemia did not object, and Shyamna did not speak either, because she knew that in that majestic and magnificent palace, a man who made her feel faintly fearful was sitting on the throne in the palace, waiting for Zero's arrival. After watching Zero step on the steps in front of the palace, Ray Minkai retracted his gaze and looked at the other side of the ancient palace. UFFI, Princess Shyamna. Let's go. Maybe someone has been waiting for us there for a long time. As soon as Ray Minkai finished speaking, the white cat, State Zero, appeared on Ray Minkai's shoulder. I feel it. The thing we lost should be there. The thing we lost? Is it those fragments of information? Or my memory? Ray Minkai asked. It's all possible. As Ray Minkai and the others approached the ancient palace, a slender and elegant figure gradually appeared on the floating steps. Marina. Princess Marina. As soon as she saw the figure, the long-dormant memory immediately made Euphemia exclaim. And this name made Rei Minkai and Shyamuna show different expressions. Rei Minkai's eyes showed a hint of as expected and secretly sized up Euphemia, who was a little excited. He knew that in Euphemia's childhood, she was influenced by Marina's perfect image of a woman, which led to her developing into an idealist when she grew up. Shyamuna, on the other hand, showed a hint of surprise. She never expected that when Charles and the outsiders were fighting for the Sea World, the princess, who was rumored to have died long ago, was still alive in this Sea World. Moreover, what surprised her the most was that she could not discover the fact that Marina was still alive in the Sea World. Until today, when she guided Rei Minkai and Euphemia into the Sea World, she found out the truth. Long time no see. Euphemia, you've grown up. On the steps, the princess, who had a perfect image in the hearts of Euphemia, no, in the hearts of Cornelia, Euphemia, and even all the members of the royal family, showed a trace of nostalgia and a warm smile. Really? Is it really Princess Marina? You're really still alive? In surprise, Euphemia took a step and trotted along the steps to Marina's side. Rei Minkai gestured slightly to the white cat State Zero, and the latter nimbly jumped onto Euphemia's shoulder in a few jumps, looking at the woman in front of it curiously. Of course, this appearance was faked by the white cat State Zero. UFFI, I'm not alive. Now I'm just struggling at death's door in this world. Looking at the surprised Euphemia, Marina shook her head and showed a trace of sadness in her eyes. But Princess Marina smiled softly and raised her hand to stop Euphemia's words. Okay, UFFI, I know what you want to ask. Now I'm indeed dead, but in a sense, I'm still barely alive. It's just that I can't affect this world. So, whether it's Lou Lucio or Nunnally, I can only watch them suffer. While speaking, Marina's face was filled with self-reproach and sadness, and tears seemed to burst out at the next moment. No, Princess, this has nothing to do with you. It's just that the Empire doesn't care about the safety of Lou Lucio and the others. I'm very clear about this. Euphemia's words made Rei Minkai squint his eyes slightly. This girl, under Euphemia's comfort, Marina gathered her emotions and looked at Rei Minkai and Shyamuna again. UFFI, this is your night guardian, right? Yes, Princess. Marina saw through her relationship with Rei Minkai at a glance, and Euphemia's face blushed. Knight, is your name Rei Minkai? Marina's voice came from above the stairs. Rei Minkai bowed slightly and said, Yes. Greetings, Princess. Rei Minkai's etiquette could be said to have seriously offended Marina, but the princess didn't care too much about Rei Minkai's etiquette. The princess nodded and looked at Shyamuna. Although I've heard that there was a sect that separated from the church hundreds of years ago, I didn't expect to meet the leader of this sect at this delicate moment. After saying that, the princess raised her hand and bowed to Shyamuna. Nice to meet you for the first time. Your Highness Princess Shyamuna. Nice to meet you. I'm very honored to meet the rumored Princess Marina. Shyamuna's eyes flickered, and she took the initiative to bow to Marina. Whether it was as the leader of a sect or as the princess of the Gilkston Kingdom, Shyamuna couldn't follow Rei Minkai's example and just walk through the motions. After Marina and Shyamuna finished the greeting, she gestured to Rei Minkai and Shyamuna to walk up the stairs. Come, Knight, Princess Shyamuna, His Majesty has been waiting for a long time. He is very happy to see you at this time. Along the way, under Marina's lead, the people walking on the floating stairs were silent. Only the white cat, State Zero, lying on Euphemia's shoulder, looked back and exchanged glances with Rei Minkai from time to time. We're here. As Marina's voice sounded, everyone finally left the floating stairs and stepped on the platform at the top of the ancient palace. Here, a figure like a small mountain stood in front of them. Among the women, Marina, who had an outstanding height and elegant figure, was as small as a cute kitten in front of him. Charles Di Britannia. As soon as he saw the figure, Rei Minkai's eyes flashed. The white cat, State Zero, lying on Euphemia's shoulder, also jumped to the ground, and the fluff on its body also stood up. "You're here? Euphemia, my daughter, my princess. I didn't expect you to come at this crucial time." In the strong and deep male voice, the mountain-like figure slowly turned around and faced Rei Minkai, Euphemia, and Shaimyuna. "Knight, Rei Minkai, and the leader of the traders who split from our sect, Shaimyuna, welcome to the world of sea." "Knight, Rei Minkai, greets your majesty." Facing Charles, Rei Minkai couldn't be too presumptuous, so he respectfully completed the etiquette of a knight meeting a monarch. Rei Minkai, you're just as I expected. Even if you were framed by those people, you can still rely on your own outstanding ability to forge a path. You have the ability and characteristics that most of the Knight of the Britannia Empire don't have. Charles nodded, and when he commented on Rei Minkai's past performance with dignity, he looked at Euphemia. "Euphemia, my daughter, you have a good eye. Although some people have recommended a lot of knights to me in an attempt to get me to nod my head and choose a few of them to be your knight protector, now it seems that they're just trash." Charles's praise surprised Euphemia, but also made her feel doubtful. In her impression, whether it was in her childhood or her teenage years, she had never seen Charles take the initiative to praise someone else. The only thing she had seen was the tyranny and savagery hidden under Charles's unsmiling face. "Father, you're overpraising me." Euphemia calmed herself down and hurriedly lowered her head as she spoke. "No, it's a fact. This is the truth." Charles waved his hand. "Abnormal. Definitely abnormal." Rei Minkai looked at the scene of a loving father and filial daughter in front of him and secretly frowned. Charles would never do such a thing. The Charles that Rei Minkai knew was brutal and barbaric. He even had the ambition to fix the entire world in a past that could not be changed and remained in place. Now, the scene that happened in front of him was undoubtedly the most abnormal of the abnormal. "Your Majesty, please allow me to ask a few questions." Shaimna suddenly stepped forward and asked respectfully. A strange look flashed in Charles's eyes, but his expression remained unchanged as he nodded. "Ask away. Our compatriot. Not long ago, I felt that there was a change in C's world, so I wonder what your Majesty's intention is here? To prevent C's world from falling into the hands of that person from another world, and, at the same time, to protect the world we live in." Unexpectedly, under Shaimna's inquiry, Rei Minkai got a sentence from Charles that would never come out of Charles's mouth. "Save the world? Are you kidding me?" Rei Minkai's gaze fell on Euphemia, but he found that Euphemia's expression was still the same. She did not ignite her will in her father's impassioned words and cheer for her father's decision. "UFFI, father, I have a question." Under Rei Minkai's gaze, Euphemia slowly spoke. "UFFI, do you have any questions? Maybe I can answer them for you." The one who responded to Euphemia was not Charles, but Mariana. "Do you know the current situation of Nunnally and Lu Lucio?" They were all captured by that person from another world. Charles raised his hand and stopped Mariana from speaking. "Captured? Yes. This is our negligence. We originally thought that by placing Lu Lucio and Nunnally in Ashford Academy and being taken care of by the Ashford family, we would get a very safe environment." Charles's face twitched, as if revealing a trace of sadness. "However, we made a mistake. We knew nothing about the person from another world. Under our carelessness, Lu Lucio and Nunnally were taken away by the person from another world who deliberately launched an attack." With that, Charles turned around and stared at the gorgeous palace that stood opposite the ancient palace. "Now, everything we do is not only to save the world, but also to save Lu Lucio and Nunnally." "Lies." However, Euphemia mercilessly tore apart Charles's hypocritical face in the face of his high-sounding words. "Father, maybe you don't know. Just now, we were still with Lu Lucio. We entered this sea world together." As Euphemia spoke, she took a few steps back and distanced herself from Charles and Mariana. "UFFIU?" Mariana was stunned. She took a few steps forward and tried to catch Euphemia, but was blocked by the white cat State Zero. "Stop. The undead, wandering in reality, go back to hell where you belong. State White Cat Zero let out a roar, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a snow-white lion with shining mane. Mariana was shocked by State Zero's momentum and subconsciously stopped. Anna, come back. Charles's eyes flickered as he watched the white cat turn into a white lion and finally looked at Ray Minkai. Sure enough, has the power of another world hidden in your body finally awakened? Ray Minkai, Emperor Charles, perhaps it's time for you to return what you've taken from me. Charles's words were undoubtedly equivalent to admitting that he already knew Ray Minkai's identity from the beginning. Therefore, the lost item that White Cat State Zero had been brooding about was probably in Charles's hands. Return it to you? Ray Minkai. See, this is the power you're looking for. Charles showed a hint of ridicule. He suddenly raised his right hand and waved it with a clenched fist. At the same time, a scarlet shadow rushed into the sky from the back of the platform and pierced straight toward the dome. Moreover, inside this scarlet shadow, Ray Minkai saw a very familiar light. That was a unique brilliance of information fragments. Charles, sure enough, you stole my things. All doubts were solved after the appearance of the scarlet shadow that contained the fragments. Yes, a few years ago, during the assassination attempt on Euphemia, you appeared. You appeared riding that snow-white giant lion. Charles no longer concealed or hid. Instead, he straightforwardly told the truth that only he knew. Not only that, when you saved Euphemia, you also sent this fragment that was enough to kill the god of World Sea into my hands. However, at that time, I didn't know how to use this fragment. So you used Geas on me, changed my memory. Suddenly, a storm set off in Ray Minkai's mind. A circle of red light appeared in his eyes. This was a characteristic unique to those who were drugged with GASS. Yes, this is the inevitable result. Although you have great power, you have already exhausted a lot of it when you saved Euphemia. Therefore, at that time, you, who had already become a weakling, could only obey the orders of the strong. Charles slowly lowered his right hand. The scarlet shadow that rushed into the sky also slowed down. A few tentacles separated from its body and wrapped Charles's body in them. This is the last chance. UFFI, follow my orders. Help me to expel that hateful person from another world. After victory, the Britannia Empire will belong to you. Then what about you, father? Euphemia's eyes were very clear. She was not confused by Charles's promise that was equivalent to abdication. Me? It's enough for me to have World Sea. UFFI, I know your dream. So, take your knight and help me. Charles's vision was very sharp. After seeing the relationship between Ray Minkai and Euphemia, he gave up persuading Ray Minkai, who had already shown hostility. Instead, he launched a family attack on Euphemia in an attempt to save the country and pull Ray Minkai onto a chariot. However, he was rejected. Father, I refuse. Although I don't quite understand what kind of relationship World Sea has with the modern world. However, I know that if I let Father seize World Sea, then even if I become the Empress of the Britannia Empire, I won't be able to bring any changes to the empire. After a pause, Euphemia's gaze became extremely firm. The 98th Emperor of the Britannia Empire, Charles D.I. Britannia, I, as Euphemia Li Britannia, announce that no matter what your purpose is, I will ascend to the throne of the Britannia Empire and become the Empress of the Britannia Empire. I will lead Britannia, lead mankind on the journey to the Sea of Stars. You're just obsessed with the past. It's fine if you don't want the current glorious emperor. Chapter 243. Declaration. Euphemia's words were nothing more than a declaration of usurping the throne. But even so, Charles's expression still didn't change. The only change that could be seen was that the red threads wrapped around his body became denser and more numerous. Euphemia, my princess, my daughter. As expected, you still walked on the same path as Schnetzel. It doesn't matter. Charles raised his right hand and clenched his fist towards Euphemia. Power. force, wealth. Ever since the seeds of civilization were born, this song of slaughter filled with blood and tears has always been by the side of humanity. When I was still young, I witnessed the tragedy of my mother being killed and the slaughter that unfolded for that position. Euphemia, as the kindest princess of the Britannia Empire, you really can't escape the curse of power. Then, let me in all of this. Immediately after, Charles waved his right fist, and the scarlet shadow, surging behind him, immediately wrapped around him and pulled him into the scarlet shadow. Light appeared. The moment Charles was swallowed by the scarlet shadow, the light in the depths of the scarlet shadow that Ray Minkai was extremely familiar with burst out with an intense light. It rushed straight up from the inside of the scarlet shadow and towards a higher and wider dome. Roar! Suddenly, the white lion blocking in front of Mariana suddenly exploded. It waved its sharp claws and pounced towards Mariana, but pounced on empty air. Under the wave of the sharp claws, Mariana's figure shattered like an illusion. At the same time, her voice faintly rang out. Euphemia, I didn't expect that such a kind-hearted person like you would actually choose this rebellious path. You really disappoint me. Princess, a trace of guilt flashed across Euphemia's face, but it was quickly replaced by a firm will. The decision has been made. I won't go back on my word. I won't back down. Even if the one standing in front of me is the 98th Emperor of the Britannia Empire, Charles D.I. Britannia, and his consort, Mariana V. Britannia, I will defeat them. The wind blew and messed up the princess's pink hair, but it could not cover the brilliance emitted from the princess's clean, clear, and determined eyes. UFFI, you still have me. Lei Minkai's figure appeared beside Euphemia amidst the gale. His right hand gently grasped Euphemia's small hand. And Euphemia turned to look at Ray Minkai and smiled gently. People from another world, you rejected my good intentions. At this moment, Charles's voice sounded again. Moreover, Mariana's voice also sounded in Charles's voice. As the two voices rose and fell, they quietly merged into one, becoming a strange voice that was neither male nor female. Since you've rejected our kind intentions, you'll become our food. Boom! Amidst the strange mixed voices of Charles and Mariana, a rumbling sound came from the dome. It was as if thunder resounded through the 9 heavens. At the same time, a black shadow shrouded the platform where Ray Minkai, Euphemia, and Shaimuna were. It was a black shadow that was sent out by the scarlet shadow that had rapidly mutated after devouring Charles and Mariana. Roar! White Lion roared and turned around abruptly. He lowered his head and carried Euphemia on his back, then sped up and ran down the floating stairs to the flat ground below. Let's go! Ray Minkai's movements were not slow at all. When White Lion sent out the signal, he also quickly turned around and carried Shaimuna, who was unable to react to the situation in front of her, and followed behind White Lion, retreating all the way down. In midair, there was a shrill sound of the air being torn apart. It was the miserable howls of the black shadows that kept splitting from the scarlet shadow, whipping the platform. Boom! 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 As the black shadows wreaked havoc, the platform that Ray Minkai and the others were on was completely shattered. Amidst the smoke and dust, they fell into the abyss below. The ancient palaces around the platform suffered the same fate as him. The black shadows that were chasing Ray Minkai and White Lion all the way did not care about how ancient the history behind the surrounding palaces was. They only knew that these ancient palaces were only obstacles hindering their pursuit of their targets. Therefore, while following Ray Minkai and White Lion closely, the black shadows continued to advance as the ancient palaces collapsed. Boom! With the collapse of the last ancient palace, Ray Minkai and White Lion finally left the ancient palace and stepped onto the flat plains. The strange thing was that the moment Ray Minkai and White Lion stepped onto the plains, the black shadows that were following them suddenly stopped. Then, they quickly retreated and disappeared into the smoke and dust that filled the sky. After Ray Minkai put down Shaimuna, who was in his arms, he looked at the billowing smoke and frowned. After Euphemia came down from White Lion's back, She nodded slightly at Shaimyuna, who was blushing and stood beside Rei Minkai. Kai, don't mind me. Euphemia's words rang softly in Rei Minkai's ears. Hearing this, Rei Minkai nodded. I understand. UFFI. Kai, are we going? White Lion took a few steps forward and stood in front of everyone. He stared at the huge scarlet shadow that broke through the smoke and dust and said, Can we go? State Zero. This is not the real world. Although Rei Minkai knew that State Zero was confident, he still had to ask clearly. You will know when you see it. State Zero snorted coldly and let out a roar that shook the heavens and earth. Roar! Flames rose from the ground without warning and shrouded White Lion in it. Then a golden claw that shone with cold light broke the flames from the inside out. A huge steel lion that was covered in pure white armor appeared in front of Rei Minkai and the others. Lion beast. God. As soon as Shaimyuna saw the appearance of the long-fanged lion, it was the first time she witnessed it with her own eyes and not through the memories brought back by death recall. She murmured a name that almost caused her to sink into an endless cycle of reincarnation. Roar! On the plains, the giant white lion raised its huge head and roared at the scarlet shadow that had quietly condensed into a human figure. Ha ha ha! Now that things have come to this, what's the use of you appearing here again? This is C's world. This is God's world. No matter how powerful you are, you have to surrender to us in this world. The strange sounds of Charles and Mariana mixed together roared, and a black shadow fell from the sky and slammed down towards the position of the long-fanged lion. Boom! In an instant, the earth trembled. Numerous cracks centered on the long-fanged lion's position and quickly spread to the surrounding. However, even if the ground was shattered under the attack of the black shadow, it did not mean that the long-fanged lion would be smashed to pieces under this blow. Roar! The lion's roar was still loud and strong, but at this moment, the snow-white State Zero had changed into the flame-like orange-red armor, and the two long swords on its back in a crisscross posture firmly blocked the descending black shadow above the head of the long-fanged lion, so that it could not be slapped down even a little bit. UFFI, Princess Shaimyuna, are you okay? Unknowingly, Rei Minkai was already sitting in the cockpit of State Zero. Underneath the head of the long-fanged lion were Euphemia and Shaimyuna, who were tightly protected. No, we are okay. Kai, don't worry about us. Do your best to stop Imperial Father. Euphemia stood straight, and her gaze was firmly fixed on the scarlet shadow that was becoming more and more like a human figure. Understood. With the power of the two swords, the black shadow that shrouded the head of the lion was smashed into pieces. In the next moment, as the black shadow was smashed, the steel lion that evolved from State Zero to Shineta suddenly accelerated and turned into a stream of light, rushing towards the dissipating smoke and dust, rushing towards the scarlet shadow that had already condensed into a human figure. People from another world. Lion, you really surprised me. You actually condensed your own power in this world. But this is the last. Who? The wind blew violently, and the scarlet shadow stretched out a giant palm and slammed down towards Shineta. Even if the lion changes into many clothes, it will still be unable to fight against this world, because there are gods in this world, and all of you are just invaders who have wandered into this world from another world. In the midst of Charles's words, the scarlet shadow waved its left hand, and a black shadow fell down like a rainstorm. What surprised Lei Minkai even more was that this black rainstorm didn't cause any damage to the long-fanged lion, Sunderland. Instead, the moment it touched the ground, it condensed into a mech in the blink of an eye. Nightmare, Sunderland, built by the Britannia Empire. Doppelganger. Shineta's sword effortlessly cut the black Sunderland around it into pieces, but it was still like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood, because this black rainstorm seemed to be endless. Scattering beans to become soldiers? This joke is not funny. This is not a fairy tale. Lei Minkai looked at the increasing number of black Sunderland around the long-fanged lion, and could not help but laugh bitterly. Lionite, this is just an illusion. Don't fall into Charles's trap. Suddenly, Shyamyuna's voice appeared in Rei Minkai's mind. Princess Shyamyuna. Lei Minkai glanced at Shyamna, who was standing beside Euphemia and had closed her eyes at some point in time, in surprise. Perhaps the voice that appeared in his mind was not an illusion. Princess Shyamyuna, do you have any ideas on how to deal with these annoying flies? The sword of Shunada, the long-fanged lion, was sharp. No matter how many Sunderland rushed forward, they would only end up being cut into pieces. However, even the sharpest sword would have a moment of dullness. When that time came, perhaps the long-fanged lion Shunada would be drowned by the endless number of thunderclans. The appearance of the heavenly lion is not because it descended into this sea world, but because of the imagination of State Zero. In other words, as long as Lionite's imagination is strong enough, then you can help State Zero defeat these seemingly endless Sunderland. Heavenly Lion? State Zero? Rei Minkai was surprised by the name that came out of Shyamyuna's mouth, and immediately thought of the strangeness of the Sunderland. The fanged lion Nada accelerated in a straight line, and with the absolute destructive power of its destruction slash, it wiped out over 100 Sunderland in one breath. This scene, in the real world, would not be so easy to achieve. This also confirmed Shyamyuna's speculation. These Sunderland were formed by the imagination of Charles and Mariana. Once this question was asked, it was immediately denied by State Zero. No, Kai, look over there. That's the key. With State Zero's reminder, Rei Minkai's gaze pierced through the smoke and dust, and also through the scarlet shadows, and landed on the huge skull formed by the scarlet shadows. There, a fragment was quietly emitting a faint light. Information fragment. Our memories. Charles is using the power of the fragment to create this endless Sunderland. Roar. That's right. The long-fanged lion, Nida, roared angrily. It lowered its head and sped up once again. Using the powerful impact of its destructive slash, it unreasonably scattered Thunderland's formation and arrived below the Scarlet Shadow. At this time, the Scarlet Shadows had already formed a pair of huge feet. Boom! It lifted its huge foot and stomped down towards the long-fanged lion, Shunada. However, it did not step on Shunada. This height, why is it still increasing? After steering the long-fanged lion Shunada to avoid the Scarlet Shadow stomp, Lei Minkai suddenly discovered that the Scarlet Shadow's height had already exceeded 1,000 meters and was charging towards an even higher and larger boundary. The 10-meter-tall, long-fanged lion, Shunada, was like an insignificant ant in front of it. Bang! Bang! The long-toothed lion, Nida, tried to use the two swords on its back to attack the Crimson Shadow. However, the Crimson Shadow was defeated without a single scratch. In front of it was the Scarlet Shadows that could not be harmed. Behind it was the endless Sunderland. It seemed that it had reached a dead end. Ha ha! Look, Rei Minkai, this is the true power of C's world. This is the power of God. Thanks to the power fragment you brought, we can complete this important system. Whoosh! Another gust of wind blew. Shunada, who could not dodge in time, was caught in the hands of the Scarlet Shadows and raised to its chest. A face gradually appeared from its chest, and it was in front of Charles. Knight from another world, although I am very angry at your rejection, this does not prevent me from granting you a knight's home. Die! Charles shouted with a struggling expression, and the Scarlet Shadows squeezed hard, and Shunada was instantly crushed into pieces. No! At this moment, on the plains, Euphemia, who witnessed Shunada being crushed by the Scarlet Shadows, let out a sorrowful cry. Hum! A red light suddenly shone from Euphemia's chest. It shot into the sky like the light of dawn, piercing through the Crimson Shadow's wrist and illuminating the remains of the long-fanged lion. Chapter 244. Crack! The sound of an object shattering came from beside his ear. Rei Minkai opened his eyes. In front of him was a white lion squatting on the ground. What a loss of composure. The white lion opened its mouth slightly when it saw Ray Minkai open his eyes. Loss of composure? Ray Minkai was slightly stunned before he recalled the scene, before he fell into darkness. Is that so? We were crushed by Charles. Yes. What a loss of composure. Kai, ever since we fled our hometown, we have never lost our composure like this. The white lion raised its head slightly and looked at the white sky above its head. Now, are we dead? No, we're not dead, but we're still dead. The white lion shook its head and said self-deprecatingly, I didn't expect that in the end, I would still fall at the hands of my own strength. In that case, Charles has completely controlled the power in that fragment. Ray Minkai recalled that the sword of the long-toothed lion, Nada, could not cut through the defense of the Scarlet Shadow. Although I haven't completely controlled it, I'm not far from it. What a mistake. I didn't expect that when we spent a lot of effort to come to this world, we would be taken advantage of by that sinister emperor. The white lion stood up and slowly walked in front of Ray Minkai, gesturing for him to follow. Ray Minkai did not suspect anything and followed behind the white lion. Even though he didn't know what was worth white lions searching for in this vast white space, he didn't know. Time. No. Perhaps it was because time did not exist in this white space. Ray Minkai felt as if he had walked a very, very long path, but in that instant, he felt like he had only taken a few steps. This space was very strange. Along the way, the white lion did not speak, nor did it look back to see if Ray Minkai was following. It just silently led the way. Ray Minkai looked at the white lion in front of him and could not help but recall the scene of the long-toothed lion, Nada, being caught by the Scarlet Shadow and crushed in one breath. Is it really dead? White Lion suddenly stopped in his tracks. We're here. Kai. In front of Baishur, there was a fragment that emitted waves of fluorescent light. This is... As soon as he saw this fragment, Ray Minkai immediately recognized that it was the information fragment he obtained from the Destructive Guardian. However, didn't State Zero say that the fragment wasn't worth much? As if sensing Ray Minkai's doubts, the white lion turned its huge and mighty head and stared at the young knight. That's right. At first, I didn't care much about this fragment, but now it has become our trump card, a trump card that can turn defeat into victory. Trump card? But haven't we already? He's dead, but he's not dead. Kai, do you still remember what the princess with the death reversal ability said? The world we live in and the enemies we face are all sublimated from the collective consciousness of millions of living beings. As he spoke, White Lion turned around and took a step forward. It circled around the fragment and faced Lei Minkai, sandwiching the fragment between the man and lion. So, imagination, no, not only that, mental strength is a crucial trump card in this God's world that is sublimated from the collective consciousness of all living beings in this world. So, the reason why Charles could become so powerful, other than the system he developed, is also because of the fragments he took from us, which contain the fragments of our lost memories. Yes, I'm afraid that's the case. Otherwise, it can't explain why the long-toothed lion, Nada, couldn't cut through the monster's skin. Ray Minkai was silent for a while, then stepped forward and stood in front of the fragment. What should I do? Swallow this fragment? No, wait a while. The time is not right yet. The white lion looked up at the white sky again. Your princess hasn't realized this. UFFI. Ray Minkai was stunned. He suddenly remembered that Euphemia had the scarlet, golden lion medal that he had given her when he came to this world. Could it be that this was what the white lion was referring to? While Ray Minkai was thinking, the white sky above them was suddenly broken by a red light. In just a short moment, so short that Ray Minkai couldn't react, the red light that broke through the sky was directly bombarded on the fragment between Ray Minkai and the white lion. In an instant, the dim light emitted by the fragment and the red light that broke through the sky kept spinning, mixing together until a light that was brighter and more powerful than the dim light bloomed. Kai, this is the time to catch this fragment. Then, Imagine the most powerful thing in your heart. Don't forget, in this sea world, all the laws will be different from this world. In the light, the white lion's voice sounded like thunder. This is the change caused by our appearance in this world. This is also the consequence of Charles, the Emperor's attempt to occupy our fragment. Kai, imagine. Unleash your imagination to your heart's content. This sea world has already given birth to infinite possibilities because of our fragment. Possibilities? After Ray Minkai silently recited this extremely attractive term, he looked up at the fragment in front of him that had completely absorbed the red light and was emitting an even brighter light than before. Then, he raised his right hand and held the fragment tightly in his palm. Imagine, a storm appeared. A storm erupted in the Scarlet Shadow's right hand without any warning, in the body of the long-fanged lion that should have been crushed by the Scarlet Shadow. The moment the storm that became larger and more terrifying appeared, it scattered the Scarlet Shadow's right hand. Boom! As the wind howled, the originally transparent and colorless hurricane quietly turned into a powerful storm with specks of fluorescence mixed in it. It was obvious that it had a grayish-blue luster. In the blink of an eye, this grayish-blue storm that engulfed the entire scene enveloped the Scarlet Shadow in the blink of an eye. What was even more surprising was that Charles, who was hidden deep within the Scarlet Shadow and had merged with it, realized that he could not control the Scarlet Shadow. At this moment, the Scarlet Shadow seemed to have become an eternal stone statue. No matter how Charles called out, he could not get any response from the Scarlet Shadow. In the end, Charles, who had tried many times to no avail, could only watch helplessly as the ball of light rapidly condensed in the eye of the storm. Lion. It was a lion. Charles looked in shock at the lion that had clearly been crushed by the Scarlet Shadow appearing in front of him again. Moreover, this storm that caused the Scarlet Shadow to stop moving was probably the doing of this lion that had come back to life. However, what was even more surprising was still to come. The huge steel lion's body appeared again. In less than a few seconds, its majestic body actually started to turn. As its mighty head moved down to its chest and abdomen, it also revealed the human-shaped head hidden inside its head. Then, its sharp front claws flipped upwards, revealing a pair of strong iron fists. Its powerful hind legs suddenly stretched forward and turned into the legs used by the upright human form. In a few breaths, the steel lion that caused this storm had turned into a steel warrior with a huge lion head armor on its chest. How is this possible? Charles was stunned. What happened in front of him shocked him. Euphemia and Shyamna, who were standing on the plains below, looked at the steel warrior that was floating in the sky and causing a storm in surprise. Kai, State 0. Euphemia held the scarlet golden lion head medal that was emitting a faint red light with both hands. There were still tears at the corner of her eyes, but her face had already revealed a joyful smile. This mech is not a mech produced in our world. Could it be that the Lion Knight has already seen through the truth of C's world? On the other side, Shyamna stared at the Steel Warrior's every move. The changes in the Steel Warrior were far more than that. Charles, what a pity. I'm back. As soon as the Steel Warrior opened its mouth, Ray Minkai's voice was heard. Ray Minkai, since you're already dead, don't come back to this world. Charles's roar sounded from the Scarlet Shadow, but it still did not receive a response from the Scarlet Shadow. Charles, your intentions, your ambitions, I understand them all, but what you're doing is wrong. The footsteps of mankind should not stop here. You, who are in the midst of a bloody struggle for power, did not pay attention at all, and did not think of personally witnessing the price that mankind has to pay in order to move forward, in order to move towards a better and wider world. Ray Minkai's voice was heard continuously, and the lion head armor on the Steel Warrior's chest lit up with a dazzling light. Shout! At this moment, outside the storm, the sound of an eagle's cry could be heard in the sky above. Amidst the eagle's cry and the raging storm, A pair of gigantic steel wings that could blot out the sky broke through the storm and circled around the steel warrior from above. Roar! 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 At this moment, in the distance of the plain where Euphemia and Shymuna were standing, a series of drum-like roars could be heard. Boom! 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 In the midst of the footsteps that could shake the earth, a figure as huge as a mountain rushed over and rushed into the storm under the surprised gazes of Euphemia and Shymuna. Rumble! The shaking of the earth did not disappear because of the departure of the mountain-like figure. Instead, it became more intense. As the shaking intensified, the earth cracked, and cracks spread from afar, extending to the edge of the storm at an extremely fast speed. Then, as the earth shattered, two sharp golden beams of light shot out from the ground. They plunged into the storm together with the mountainous figure from before. Power! It's here! This was Rei Minkai's imagination. This was the strongest power that Rei Minkai could imagine under White Lion's guidance. This was the image that had left the deepest impression in Rei Minkai's childhood memory. This was also the hottest blood in the depths of Rei Minkai's memory. Come, a brave warrior formed from blazing courage. Respond to my call. Descend from the other side of the universe. Inside the steel warrior, Rei Minkai raised his left hand and placed it in front of his chest, calling out to the hot-blooded blood hidden in the depths of his memory. Light. It appeared. A ray of light emerged from the void and gathered on Rei Minkai's left hand. G. 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 With a flash of light, the hot-blooded blood that symbolized Rei Minkai's childhood memory responded to Rei Minkai's call. Howl! Roar! Buzz! In the sky, on the ground, in response to the steel warrior's call, the three figures that stepped through the air roared and began the fusion process with the steel warrior as the leader. Flashing with a cold golden light, the powerful drilling vehicle that penetrated the crust of the earth removed its indestructible drill bit, revealing a slot that was enough for the steel warrior's leg to be inserted. The moment the steel warrior's foot completely entered the slot, the fixing mechanism that had been on standby immediately locked it firmly in the roar of the machine. On the ground, the mountain-like figure frantically beat its chest. As it roared, it jumped up and split into two halves in midair, one on the left and one on the right. It quickly moved to the shoulders of the steel warrior under the guidance of the laser emitted by the steel warrior. Then fusion, chi, with the sound of the mechanical mechanism closing and locking, a rapidly cooling gas was released. Howl! In the sky, the steel wings that circled around the steel warrior spread their wings and flew to the back of the steel warrior. With a flip of their body, the wings closed and the mechanism locked. A helmet with a special mark rose from the steel wings and was placed on the head of the steel warrior. At this moment, the mask of the helmet was lifted and two cold glints shone from the eyes of the steel warrior. The steel wings spread out, and the steel warrior crossed his strong arms and swung them forward repeatedly, throwing out a series of straight punches that were mixed with rumbling sounds. Look, this is a figure condensed from blazing courage. This is the hero that should be praised by humans. After completing the fusion, the steel warrior, who stood in front of Charles with a new image, raised his shining left hand and announced loudly, This is the legendary king of bravery, Jayagagar. It turned out that the true identity of the figure that set off the storm and called for an ally from the other side was the king of bravery, Jayagagar from the King of Bravery series. The storm dissipated the moment the King of Bravery fully revealed his figure. The Scarlet Shadow, which had been unable to respond to Charles's call, also responded to Charles's call at this moment. TSK. At this point, what's the use of taking out these toys? For me, who has already obtained the power of God, this is just a joke. Charles seemed to be a little exasperated. When he could only watch helplessly as the King of Bravery appeared, Charles had developed a trace of fear towards the King of Bravery. In his mind, the Scarlet Shadow, which was created by combining the system that he had created with his years of hard work and the mysterious fragment from another world, was undoubtedly a powerful force that was equivalent to that of God. However, just now, the Scarlet Shadow had actually lost all reaction in the storm caused by the Steel Warrior. Shameless. Courage. It's just an excuse that humans find to satisfy their own selfish desires. Whether it's the sky, the sea, or the earth, humans always explore the unknown in the name of courage. Then, driven by desire, they take everything they explore for themselves. Therefore, this world is dark. It's unbearable. King of bravery? What a joke. Today, I will crush a laughable existence like you to pieces. Minkai. Come on. The future of mankind will definitely not be destroyed by you like this. The power of courage is far stronger than the God you speak of. Minkai's eyes flashed, and the king of bravery, Jayagagar, immediately took a stance. Instead of retreating, he advanced and took the initiative to attack the Scarlet Shadow that was dozens of times taller than him. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.